We'll get started with our first agenda item here in just a moment. Before we do, a quick run through on how we'll handle each of our cases today. We'll have staff present each case one by one to us, then we'll ask the applicant to come up and share any additional details with the commission that they might have for us. We'll have an opportunity to ask them questions, then we'll open up a public hearing for each individual item. At that point, you'll be able to come forward, state your name for the record, and share up to 3 minutes. After that, we'll invite the applicant back up to address anything that was raised during the public hearing, ask any final questions before we have a discussion as a commission and make a decision before moving on to our next case. I'll do conflict of interest in a moment. I do see some folks here. I just want to mention, since we did receive a lot of correspondence on a potential Huff Park adjacent development, I want to mention that the planning department has not received any applications for that, and so that is not on the agenda today. So there's not a scheduled public hearing for that. If you do have thoughts you'd like to share with us, you can wait until the public comment portion of the meeting at the end of our agenda and share your thoughts then. That will be part of the record going forward. Or you can continue to contact the planning department, either Tyler or staff, through, is that the website? They have your contact information there. Before we get started on our first hearing, commissioners, any conflicts or potential conflicts for today? No? All right, let's get started with 1935 Bretton Road Southeast. Elizabeth can take us through this. Thank you.
The subject property is 1935 Bretton Road Southeast. As you can see, it's located in an NOS, Neighborhood Office Service Zone District. The NOS Zone District is often adjacent to residential zone districts, and the regulations for site layout, building elements, as well as uses reflect the proximity of residential. Across the street, we have Bretton Village Mall, which is, it's a large shopping center. And the subject property is currently unimproved, completely unimproved. The building on the site has been demolished. And the background on that is that it used to be improved with a Chase Bank branch. And the planning department, received a LUDS or site permit for the demolition of a site permit for improvements on the site for a medical office building. Because medical office is a permitted use, we did allow the demolition of the building to occur. After that, we got plans for a building permit, and we realized it was an urgent care. This is the same urgent care company that the Planning Commission considered up in Celebration when we had that major amendment. So in this zone district, just as in the Celebration PUD, the urgent care or clinic use isn't a permitted use. And that's what brings us to the application under consideration today. So the applicant, so the building had already been demolished, and then we realized, oh goodness, now we have a vacant lot and a use that isn't allowed. The applicant discussed with staff several options for moving forward. One of the options was rezoning to C. We do have C across the street. Bretton Village Mall is zoned C. We find that to be, we did not find that to be the best course of action. If it were rezoned to C, any use in the C zone district could be allowed. And we, as staff, did not find that appropriate. Everything on the west side of Breton is neighborhood office service. It's a little bit, it's less intense of uses than would be allowed in the C. And there's also that adjacency to residential. So we did not support a rezoning to C. On the other hand, the proposed use as this urgent care is not too dissimilar from a medical office use. And so it may be slightly more intense, and I'll leave that to the Planning Commission to sort through, but staff did not find it inappropriate for the applicant to pursue a request for a conditional rezoning. And so that's where the applicant and staff landed, and the applicant is pursuing a conditional rezoning to allow the property to be used as an urgent care use as they operate it. The agreement that has been proposed by the applicant also allows for any other use that would be allowed in the NOS zone district. There were a couple of elements that I mentioned in the staff report that the applicant and staff have resolved, and I updated the agreement online. It's in the packet to reflect, I think, probably the final agreement. That final agreement indicates that the specific medical clinic use as proposed by the applicant is what would be allowed. And the rationale for that is so as I think medical clinic could be interpreted to have a range of uses, and there might be some medical clinics that have higher intensity of use or might result in a number of folks waiting outside for appointments. And so we didn't find that to be appropriate for this location. So we incorporated that into the agreement with the acquiescence of the applicant. We also made modifications to ensure that the building and the site would be developed in conformity with the NOS site layout and building element requirements. And we did have the agreement reviewed and by Mr. Hooker from the Attorney's Office. So from our end, the agreement as proposed now is, we support the agreement in its current form. As I mentioned, the site layout has already been approved. We have an issued LUDS permit. This is what the site layout looks like. It meets all the NOS zone district requirements. The building as proposed, it looks very similar to the one that we saw up in Celebration, but to meet NOS requirements, some minor modifications would need to be made to the height and the parapet, and those are things that the applicant and staff can work on together. I'd also like to mention that the Eastgate Neighborhood Association has been advised of this request. At this time, I don't have any input from them, but I have emailed them, and they have not provided anything to date. So in sum, we're looking at consideration of a conditional rezoning agreement, rezoning the property from NOS Neighborhood Office Service to Mid-Century Neighborhood Commercial for the purposes of an urgent care with the conditions that are included in the agreement. Do you have any questions for me?
So just to confirm, your recommendation that the agreement includes the building layout and building elements, that's been incorporated into the new agreement. Would that also then be part of a condition, or is that just kind of covered in this agreement?
It's
Between
covered in the agreement, and I think on this page, we added, in order to permit the clinic use and any, let's see, medical clinic use. Oh, did I not attach the updated one? Let's see here.
I do see the agreement, and
Oh,
it
no.
looks like if you go down to the next page,
Oh,
it does have, under the conditions of the proposed zoning, it does mention building elements and that sort of thing.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
that agreement actually covers us, and it's not required that we have additional conditions placed on our recommendation for rezoning.
what you have in the packet is the updated form. What I have here in my presentation is the old one. No additional conditions are necessary.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions for Elizabeth? All right. I'll invite the applicant up if there are other details you'd like to share with us.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Mitchell Harvey. I'm with Stonefield Engineering. With me tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, is Eric Stark with Miller Johnson and Greg McDade with Allrig USA. He's the developer on this project. Ms. Zeller did a great job of explaining kind of the project, so I'll try to be brief here. But just a little history of the site is we submitted for preliminary approval back in April 2022. We received our LUDS approval back in September 2022. Throughout that time, we showed a medical office on our site plan, as you can see here. That is kind of consistent with what we typically do for this user. The user is Well Now Urgent Care. We've built a Well Now in Lowell, Plainwell, as well as Portage. And on those plans, we put medical office because that's how it was treated. When we were reviewing the zoning ordinance, we felt that this user was within the medical office designation. Medical office is actually under the commercial zoning use section within the table. Medical clinic was within educational, institutional, that kind of stuff, and so we didn't feel that fit our use. So that's kind of how we arrived there. I want to make it clear we were always planning on a Well Now here. We're not trying to switch anything out. I believe our original application, or our original elevations that we showed actually showed the Well Now on there. So it's not like we're trying to pull anything here. Just a few things about Well Now. They do routine checkups, treatment of minor injuries, physicals, COVID testing, cold and flu treatments, that kind of thing. They do not provide any overnight stays. There's no surgeries that occur there. And I don't know if anybody had a chance to visit their website, but on their website it does say, if you're experiencing an emergency, call 911 or go to the nearest emergency room. So it's not an emergency service center. It's, how we treat it as more of a medical office where you make an appointment, you go, you get your COVID shot, you get your COVID testing, you get, a physical if you're about to play, high school football, that kind of thing. So, we feel the Well Now user is kind of consistent with the area. There's an office building to the north. There's a bank to the south. There's that commercial kind of shopping center over to the east, and then south, just across Burton, there's a dental office, and we feel we're kind of consistent within that corridor there. And we think it'll be complementary to the surrounding areas. Site plan wise, we designed the building to meet all other ordinance requirements. The front building has kind of been placed up in front of the street to kind of maximize the spacing from the residence to further to the west and to the north. And then we feel the site's going to be significantly landscaped. We don't have a landscaping plan pulled up, but we're proposing 10 new trees and over 90 new shrubs of various species across the site. So we really think we're going to be able to beautify this site with, a really good development here. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Stark. He's going to touch a few items on the conditional rezone. But besides that, we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric Stark with Miller Johnson, and I'll be very brief. I did want to provide just a little additional background. We've been working with Elizabeth on this for a handful of months, and really, when we learned that this is being classified as a medical office, we have another one of these in a neighboring municipality that we're kind of going through right now, being treated as a medical office, and so, we were kind of concerned by that, obviously, and so, we've been talking with Elizabeth, and, there are a number of options on your ordinance. Initially we kind of thought, well, this might be kind of an unclassified use. It's kind of in between medical office and clinic. We looked at maybe a use variance. We looked at just a rezoning to see, because we do adjoin Breton Village Mall across the street. We don't adjoin residential. But honestly, all three of those options, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose there. And there wasn't really a good compromise. So, the rezoning, yeah, that might be better for us. But at the end of the day, I think that's a lot harder. It might not fit as well. And so when we were working with Elizabeth, we saw the conditional option as kind of a win-win is our hope, because we are restricted to what's interesting in the agreement. We're restricted to this medical service / medical office. Everybody still kind of understands that there's a medical office component here, which does create this confusion about what we are and where we fit. So again, we got to this conditional rezoning option as a way that hopefully gives you enough tools to ensure that what we do there is well now, and nothing else other than what could be permitted in the NOS district. So that's all I have. Any other questions? Happy to answer them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
What would the hours of operation be? And can you also talk about traffic expectations?
The hours of operation are 8 to 8. Is that correct, Greg? 7 to 8. Traffic, we have, it's mostly appointment based. So you obviously are kind of limited to, how many people you can fit in there. So you're not gonna, similar to how you would see with the drive-through restaurant where, 12 o'clock hits, it's lunchtime, you have a big spike. Here you have more of a spread out traffic pattern where it's appointment based, people are coming in at regular intervals. So you're not going to see those big peaks and valleys. And in general, this medical user is not a big traffic driver. It's pretty minimal compared to other things, restaurants, shopping centers, that kind of stuff.
Any other questions? Somewhere in the application I saw 4 to 6 vehicles an hour or something like that.
That seems accurate.
Yeah, 30 to 40 patients per day was in the Miller-Johnson letter. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and consideration in this.
All right, I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today from the community and like to share your thoughts on this case on Breton, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us. Seeing no one jump up, I'll close the public hearing. Turn to commissioners for comments on this.
I think it's a good fit, and I think the zoning resolution works for this kind of operation, and glad to see a vacant site being redeveloped.
Just a question, I guess. If the property should change hands someday to a different owner, how does the conditional zoning then stay with the property? I assume so. It could be, yeah. Yeah. So
Yes,
it
runs with the land.
Yeah, and it's essentially what it ends up being is we're changing it in theory to this MCNC district with a conditional use that you can't use it for anything in that. So it's essentially kind of its own zoning. Now we're just creating a separate zoning pocket for this one parcel, right?
Correct, yeah. It's the standards that are set forth and the conditional use will apply to that property moving forward, unless amended.
So it could be anything in NOS or in urgent care that operates within the scope of the agreement, is my understanding.
Right, I guess I'm thinking more of a, 15 years from now, a new owner comes in and it appears on the record to be zoned one way, but it's really not, right? They'll have to make sure that this is, that's not for my, not my concern really, but just get awkward over time.
Yeah, I think just the traffic count here is pretty low. Did you have something you wanted to add? Sorry.
Yeah, just to follow up, the agreement will be recorded, so then that'll be, exactly, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that this traffic count pushes us into the commercial territory. I feel like this is consistent with what we'd see here. Probably fewer hourly users than a bank, especially during peak times. So I think it's a fine fit. I don't have any issues with it.
I'm comfortable with it if you want me to make the motion.
Yes, please.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission recommends approval of the request of Grand Rapids Retail Management, Jordan Chapman, for the approval of a conditional rezoning agreement for 1935 Breton Road Southeast for the following reasons. Should I have water first? The proposed zone, district, and conditional rezone, that's okay, rezoning offer is consistent with the master plan future use map because the area is designated as a neighborhood center intended to serve residents in the vicinity. Will provide reasonable accommodation for growth and development, and is consistent with the NOS zone district because the applicant has voluntarily offered a conditional rezoning agreement which would subject the property to certain conditions and restrictions limited to future use and development on the property. The proposed new zone district is compatible with the zone district and neighborhood classification in the neighborhood because the site and building will be designed to reflect NOS zone district site layout and building element requirements. And the conditional rezoning will allow the property and surrounding area to retain the benefits of the current NOS zone while adapting to complement the existing medical and medical adjacent uses in the vicinity. The proposed development will not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the establishment of the use on the property will further develop this hub of economic activity, providing local residents with essential services conveniently located near their homes. The proposed zone district and conditional rezoning will bear a reasonable and rational connection and/or benefit to the property to be rezoned because the proposed use is not dissimilar to medical office use, which is permitted in the surrounding NOS zone district. The proposed zone district and conditional rezoning will result in a better development than would have been likely if the property had been rezoned without a zoning agreement, or if the property were left to develop under existing zone district, because the building was vacant for a significant amount of time prior to the applicant's interest in the property. The proposed zone district and conditional rezoning are necessary to allow the rezoning to be approved because given the zoning of the surrounding properties, rezoning of the subject property would be inappropriate without conditions as offered by the applicant.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have support? Support. Any final discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Our next case is 1058 Butterworth Street Southwest, and Laura will take us through this case.
So this is a rezoning request for 1058 Butterworth Southwest. It's a request to rezone it from SDIT to TNLDR. As you can see on this map, the subject property shaded in green is on the edge of the SDIT zone district. It's bordered by LDR, and traditional business area is across the street. The future land use map has designated this area as industrial, There is no area-specific plan for this property at this time. However, there is a proposed Butterworth area-specific plan as part of the new community master plan that's in progress. The actual subject properties for that proposed plan has not been determined, nor has the future uses for that area. That hasn't been determined yet either. So we're not sure what the future holds for this property. We'll find out shortly. As you can see around the property, there is, to the south and to the west, there is active industrial use. South of the property is the Kent County Recycling Facility, so it's a pretty active industrial use. There is also quite a bit of residential homes in the area, in the LDR zone district, as well as to the west of the property, there are some homes in the IT zone district. So it's a bit of a mix here. The subject property is about 5,000, a little over 5,000 square feet. It's 50 feet wide and approximately 100 to 116 feet deep. The property to the west is a commercial building that has been constructed all the way up to the property line. The residential home to the east has been constructed. The corner of it is on the property line. As far as I could find, it doesn't look like this parcel has ever been developed. This is the original plat map. The property in question is right here, south of Butterworth, one parcel in from Marion Street. And it's about 40 feet deeper than originally platted. It acquired half of the property to the south. It was originally platted to be residential, and that fits with the development in the area. This is the Sanborn map that I found, and as you can see, the 3 residential homes to the east are on this map, and this property has not been developed. It is currently vacant. As I've said, it has some mature trees on the site. There's a water main that was put in place in 1917 that is probably still there. I don't know if it's ever been connected. So it's ready for development potentially. There might need to be some improvements to that water main to ensure that it works properly and doesn't contain lead should the property be developed for residential purposes. The property is undersized for any industrial use. Many of the industrial uses require a minimum size to allow for the use, and this it's a small property for any kind of industrial use. And if rezoned, it could be developed into a single-family home by right. It meets the minimum requirements. If a 2-family dwelling is desired on that property, it would require an administrative departure for lot width and area reduction and a special land use. The applicant has reached out to the John Ball area neighbors, and they have submitted a letter that they do not oppose the rezoning. And we have received 2 letters from neighboring property owners that are not opposed to the rezoning, but have some concerns about future development at the site, and those are included in your packets. Does the Planning Commission have any questions for me?
Thanks, Laura. Any questions at this time? All right, thanks. I'll invite the applicant up if there are other details you'd like to share with us.
Hi, Commission. My name is Landon Bartley from Proxima Collective. I'm representing the applicant. Thank you, Laura, for your summary. I guess I just echo a couple points that Laura mentioned. that this property is currently industrially zoned, but is undersized for industrial development. So I would say cannot be reasonably used as it's zoned. We considered looking at a variance, but because of the adjacent residential properties and in conversations with the John Ball area neighbors and Swan, determined that a rezoning would be more, I guess, a better solution, particularly since this property can't be and has never been developed industrially as zoned. To the master plan question, as you know, the master plan future land use map is sort of painted with a broad brush, and the industrial designation also includes, for what it's worth, all the houses to the east, all the LDR zoning. So we certainly feel that, although it may not be specifically supported by the future land use map of 2002, current conditions warrant the rezoning and additional residential development. Did see the couple letters that came in from neighbors. I wasn't able to talk to Mr. Sack last night when he called, but I did connect with him this morning, and it sounds like his concerns are mostly with parking. I also reviewed the letter from the Lutzes, and we noted the concerns about mature trees and the sort of root systems underneath the ground and how developable this property would actually be. That's certainly something to be considered. Right now, at this point, we're looking for the zone change to residential to facilitate that residential development, be it single family as permitted by the LDR zone district, or like Laura mentioned, two family with special land use approval and administrative departure for the lot size and width. So I would say that we're still hoping that the Planning Commission will recommend approval to the City Commission to change this zoning. Once residentially zoned, we'd certainly look at constructing a residence of one or two families, but in accordance with the requirements of the zoning ordinance, including parking, including setbacks, including tree preservation, and at that point would take a really deep dive to make sure that it would actually be feasible given the current conditions on the property. But right now it can't be used because of the size of the property and the industrial zoning. So I think that covers it. I guess if there are any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, Landon. Question, the satellite image here, is that still current conditions with the kind of vacant yard to the southeast? And
Yes.
looks like a shed or a garage immediately to the east behind the houses?
The one on the screen, or
Yep, yes,
yeah, both are current.
okay.
This property is unapproved, and as is the property to the southeast.
So both of those properties are zoned industrial or zoned IT, it looks like, including that garage that I assume is probably used in association with these residential properties?
Yeah, the garage is actually, so it's sort of a T-shaped property to the east. The south half of that property, I think it's, I can't find basically this property that I'm.
I see, okay.
So that's attached, but this
But
south
split
half
zoning.
of this is split zoned
Yeah,
to
okay.
industrial. We did talk to J-Ban, and in fact, one of the board members that's well-known to staff and probably the commission suggested, hey, this would be great. We'd even love you to combine the next door property and the property to the south on Franzman and have multifamily, which was a nice suggestion, but that's not in the scope of this request. It's just to rezone this single property to LDR. And hey, getting a letter from J-Ban of non-opposition is as close to support as we're going to get. So we're happy for them to have sent that.
Thanks, Landon. Any other questions at this time?
Is the I drove by there this morning. Is the property to the west, is that in use? I couldn't tell. Or is it vacant?
We don't believe it's in use. We haven't seen any active uses at the property every time we've gone by, and haven't been successful when we've reached out.
Okay. And you don't know how long it's been vacant, do you?
We don't.
Okay.
All right, if there are no other questions, I'll have you take a seat. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today about 1058 Butterworth Street Southwest, please come forward, state your name, and share your thoughts with us. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any other questions? All right. Dig into discussion then.
So with this, the property to the west is still considered industrial and will remain industrial, but it is almost the same size, if not smaller, of a property. And that's been, it's left industrial zoned. So why is this property considered too small of a property to be industrial? It's a history, right? Okay.
I would expect that, flat and large single story is more what we're seeing in industrial, and why, this site would not be. It's interesting to me that it was originally platted as residential as well.
Commissioner, it's a legal non-conforming use.
Okay.
Someone could build on it. They may need to seek some variances or some additional approvals for the industrial
Okay,
property.
that's fair.
So
I mean, it's really, even driving by it from the front, it's very hard to understand the actual size of it, so thanks.
I thought it looked smaller than when I see it on here compared, but there's a lot of trees in the front too. I think, we've had a lot of discussion about need for housing, infill housing. That this site is appropriate for housing and likely would never be used for industrial, hasn't been used for industrial. So I support, using this property to start adding to our needs for infill housing. I don't know if you call this infill housing, but it's filling in.
I think just to address some of the concerns that were raised in two of the letters, while parking may be a concern, the homes that are owned by the author of the letter don't have off-street parking. So I'm not sure that it should inhibit a private property owner from doing something on their property because of the lack of something on someone else's. So that's a challenging argument to support, but certainly something that we can contemplate. In terms of safety and the aesthetics of the neighborhood, I think new infill helps. More people in the neighborhood helps, so I'm not concerned about that, and I'm supportive of this.
Yeah, I would support as well, and I think that if the existing, by right use is industrial, that would certainly probably create more parking hazards or challenges than a 1 or 2 family home, so I would support this.
Okay, anyone willing to make a motion?
I am. And then I'm done. Therefore, be it resolved that the Planning Commission recommends approval of the request of Spitzley Group, Patrick Spitzley, to rezone 1058 Butterworth Street Southeast from SDIT, Special Districts Industrial Transportation, to TNLDR, Traditional Neighborhood Low-Density Residential, to facilitate development of the property for residential purposes for the following reasons. The proposed zone district will be consistent with the purpose of the and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the future land use map, because the industrial designation by the 2002 master plan does not adequately address current development needs. And this rezoning will support the master plan recommendation 3.3 Great Neighborhoods for providing a choice of neighborhood types and encouraging continuous neighborhood reinvestment. The proposed zone district will further the themes and objectives of the master plan, as well as any relevant adopted area-specific plans, because objective GN3 promotes increasing the number and variety of housing units, allowing for new housing products and a range of housing types within all neighborhoods. The property to be rezoned can reasonably accommodate the requirements of the proposed zone district, because the property will meet the minimum requirements of the proposed zone district for development, and the property is undersized for any industrial use and has never been developed for industrial purposes. The proposed zone district designation is compatible with the existing zone districts in the neighborhood because the adjacent properties are zoned TN TBA and TN LDR, and this rezoning will extend the low-density residential district that is already developed. The physical, geological, hydrological, and other environmental features of the property to be rezoned are compatible with the full range of uses in the proposed zone district because the existing mature trees on the property are located near the property boundaries and could potentially be preserved upon development due to the setback requirements. The proposed zone district or neighborhood classification will not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the public facilities already exist, and rezoning will encourage investment for future development on vacant property that has never been developed. The proposed zone district is consistent with the trend of development in the neighborhood because the residential uses already exist in adjacent TN LDR zone district, as well as nearby properties within the SDIT zone district. The property to be rezoned was improperly zoned or classified when this chapter was adopted or amended because the property does not adequately meet the current needs of industrial users, and the property was originally platted for residential use.
Support.
All right, we have motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Our next case is 330 Covell Ave Southwest, and Elizabeth will take us through this.
Whoops. This is a request from the Mines Golf Club. They are requesting approval of a banquet facility and restaurant with alcohol sales and outdoor seating as an accessory use to an existing golf course. The subject property, the parcel that we're talking about, is 330 Covell Avenue Southwest. The golf course, I wish I had a larger aerial photo, but the golf course, I think, takes up 4 or 5 parcels. The subject property, as well as the property to the north here, are in the city of Grand Rapids. The other parcels are in the city of Walker. The existing clubhouse, which you can see here, there's a clubhouse and a pavilion. They are in the city of Grand Rapids, and those back in 2017, the Planning Commission granted approval of on-site alcohol sales and consumption for the clubhouse and outdoor patio and pavilion, as well as alcohol cart service on the golf course. So that was the last time the project came to the Planning Commission, and actually, I can't remember an OS project since then. There might have been one, but I can't remember any. So now the golf course is under new ownership, and the new owner is proposing these new improvements. A banquet and restaurant venue is proposed. It's about 16,000 square feet. The lower level, which you can see on this rendering on the right, upper right that I'm pointing to, will provide storage for golf carts and restaurant refrigeration coolers and staging and the like, operational issues. The existing clubhouse on the site, which is what I'm pointing to on the screen, that will stay, but the pavilion will be demolished. And in its place, this new project is proposed. This is a site plan. The banquet venue is to be used for typical assembly events such as weddings and meetings, and will have a capacity of 260 seats. I think originally the application indicated a closing time of 12:30 a.m. The applicant has now submitted a lease agreement, and that indicates midnight with clear out time of 12:30 a.m. So the applicant can address that when he gets up to speak, and we'll clarify the hours of operation. I wrote in the staff report that an operation plan and facility agreement have not been provided, but since I wrote that, we have received that agreement. It does indicate operational aspects, and staff is satisfied with that. The restaurant will have seating. Let's see, I'll go to the floor plan. The restaurant will have seating for 79 patrons. And then there's a three-season room, which has 70. Actually, I'd like the architect to clarify if the three-season room is different than the outdoor seating. So.
I guess the
So, no, when you get up to speak, you can talk about that. So, thank you. And the operating hours are until 10 p.m. Sunday through Wednesday, and 11 p.m. Thursday through Saturday. And if I could ask the applicant to confirm the latest hours of operation of the outdoor seating, that would be appreciated. The construction of this facility would result in an additional 65 new employees or so to the existing 47. On the screen before you here shows the proposed building elevations. So the west elevation at the top here is what will face Koval and the parking lot. This elevation for this zone district in the OS, the west, this is a front, it faces the street. It should have 40% transparency. I don't have a calculation, but I can tell it's not 40%. So the Planning Commission should consider if this is appropriate. And I would encourage the Planning Commission to take into account all the, the windows that have been incorporated, as well as the uses behind, as well as the south elevation and the east elevation. The south elevation faces O'Brien to the south, and there's outdoor seating proposed along this side, and there's a significant amount of windows. The east elevation is facing the golf course, and it's all windows. And then the north elevation, there's service areas on that side. Materials are shingle-style composite siding, cultured stone accents, and an asphalt shingled roof. As far as the site layout goes, the SDOS, Open Space Zone District, requires a minimum front setback of 25 feet. It's not a build-to line, it's a minimum setback for the building of 25 feet. That setback also goes for the parking lot. Most of the parking lot are, a significant portion of the parking lot is located within that setback. It can stay where it is. But anything new would need to meet that 25-foot setback. Since I have little recent experience with the OS district, I misread the regulation, and I interpreted it originally like we do for most of our zone districts, with no parking in front of the building. That's actually not the regulation in the OS. Parking can go in front of the building, but no closer than 25 feet to the lot line. So I realized that relatively late, and I guess I'm mentioning this because there may be an opportunity for some slight modifications to add some additional on-site parking to the south. And so I think we should leave that option open for the applicant if they do wish to do that. Along the west elevation, there's a lot of, there are some trees and shrubs. It doesn't fully meet our parking lot landscape screening requirements, but it's fairly well landscaped. I don't believe there's anything on the south. We would ask, as a condition of approval, that the parking lot be brought closer to the landscape screening, and I guess I would just say parking lot landscaping requirements. And I neglected to include that in the resolution. So if you are amenable to approval, I would ask that you include that. As far as parking goes, there are currently 82 parking spaces on site that serves the existing golf course operation, which is primarily the golf course, and then there's the clubhouse and the pavilion. So the applicant across the street, this is also, it has a gravel parking lot across the street, also on the golf course property, but in the city of Walker. And so this area is used for overflow parking. There's about 54 spaces there. Unfortunately, I don't really have a good aerial that shows this, but to the northwest is also on the golf course property is the maintenance building, and that along the drive there, the applicant estimates an additional 70 parking spaces that could be used if needed. So I bring this up because, as proposed, the new construction would require 146 spaces, okay? And that doesn't include the existing golf operation, and the clubhouse. The zoning ordinance doesn't actually have a parking requirement listed for a golf course. So I think we can look at it as the 82 spaces that are there now are sufficient for the existing operation. And the Planning Commission should consider whether, with the off-site parking that will be available through valet parking for events, and the different times of operation, whether there will be adequate parking for the uses. I have asked the applicant to talk a little bit about about that. He's indicated to me that he has several decades of golf course and country club management, so he'll be able to talk about how he plans to operate this, as well as when the peak times of demand are anticipated. Peak times, differing peak times of uses is something that can be taken into account when considering, the adequacy of parking. The last thing that I'd like to mention is neighborhood outreach. The applicant didn't include anything in the application, but he did convey to me that he's had discussions with neighbors, and he'll be able to talk about that. So in sum, we are looking at the appropriateness of a new banquet facility and restaurant with outdoor seating and alcohol use at the Mines Golf Course in the OS Zone District. So we're looking at that use, and then we're also looking at the adequacy of parking for those uses. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions for Elizabeth at this time?
So you said and restaurant. Is the proposed new building, is there a restaurant there already?
There is a clubhouse, and I believe it's a grill, and I'll let the applicant talk about those details if you don't mind. That would be here, the existing operation.
Okay.
Showing you on the,
Okay.
okay.
Any other questions for Elizabeth? All right, then I'll invite the applicant up if there are other details you'd like to share about.
I'm Mark, the architect working on the job. Elizabeth, the Three Seasons room doesn't include the outdoors seating, and so that shows in the plans. C1, I think, has all the information on there, and then also we've discussed the so there's the Three Season Park seating, the restaurant seating, and the banquet seating, and then the outdoor seating, and I have that separated. One of the things that I didn't realize that half of it was in Grand Rapids when I first started into the project. The other half was in Walker. So I did work with Walker and their planner about the parking. And I showed that there's 70 cars that we could park on the road to the maintenance building. And we actually could get twice that if we park both sides of the street. The parking lot that's over on just across from the golf course, the gravel parking lot, eventually we'll pave that. And there is no dumpster on site. All of that is going to be organized downstairs in the basement and then shipped off to the maintenance building. All of the employee parking will be by the maintenance building. We did get approval from Walker for all the parking that we're showing currently on the Walker side of the project. There's a lot of details to this building, but as a whole, it's a golf course. The front elevation, you come in and the view is to the golf course. And so that's where we put all our windows. The windows that are on the front, those are to the bathrooms, but the windows are up high, so you can't see into them. And then there's one window there's 3 windows into the kitchen, which is nice. Usually kitchens don't have any windows. And then on the other side is the bridal suite. That's the little room off the main banquet facility. And I call it a lounge because it could be used for many different things. So if there's any questions, detailed questions, I can answer those. I think I think the biggest issue here is the parking. The landscaping that Elizabeth brought up today, I don't think that's an issue of any kind. We can provide additional landscaping along between the parking lot and the street. And Chris is here. He's the owner and operator of the golf course.
Thank you, guys. Chris Sobeck, I'm the managing partner of the Mines Golf Club. Happy to address any of these things. I think it's important that, as Elizabeth said, I've been a part of Grand Rapids since 2001. I was the manager and one of the partners at Thornapple Point before purchasing this project. So I've dealt with this type of project for basically half my life here. So in comparison, we had 175 spots at Thornapple in a slightly bigger building setting. So it's a similar type parking. And when I went to purchase the golf course, the first thing I did was count parking spots, because when I drove up there, I was like, okay, here, we're going to have to take a look at this. And we have, since we've picked it up. We did add 20 additional spots into that gravel lot across the street already, with the intent to expand that further. We think we can get 25 additional spots there, knowing that the sweet spot really is in that 170 to 175 parking area. We currently park all of our staff on site. Once this is completed, we would move all of our parking for our staff off-site. So that would, generate additional spots. We are committed to the city. We look at us as part of the city. We're a unique facility. Not many cities have a 100-foot elevation, really best use property that's a golf course that'll stay a green space in the shadow of the city like we are. So we're committed, and that's why we want to upgrade this and make it more appropriate. The west side lacks a little bit of a banquet space as well, and this would help ease that concern. And it's not a risk as much as a restaurant or a banquet center that's standalone, because we have the golf that supports that. So it's a adequate use. It also gives us more, ability to, employ better employees as a year-round instead of a seasonal environment that we're in now. And we think it'll really add to Grand Rapids. I mean, honestly, we are invested in the city, and we know that we're part of it. We have a driving range also we haven't talked about that we've been investing in. We're adding a short course that has already been seeded and will open next year to help for all the new people that have come into the game. And we do have 5 high schools that utilize the school and Davenport University. So again, we're committed to growing golf and using golf. It has become extremely popular since COVID. That was one of the things people could do. So it's brought a lot of new people to the game. We don't know how long that's going to hold. I mean, so far it's held for a couple of years, but the existing, adding this building will help also give us the ability to host more events, which will give us more staying power too. So just gives us better opportunity to be, a positive long-term partner. So I don't know what questions you guys might have. I'm happy to answer anything.
So my question was, I wasn't clear, but now I see there is a restaurant and a banquet space. They're not one or the other, and part of the restaurant is outdoor.
Yes.
Okay. And so the parking that was calculated takes if everything was in operation, golf course, banquet, and restaurant. Is that correct?
Not the golf course, because we don't have a parking requirement for the golf course. The calculated parking was for all the new uses.
So then my question to you is, even though we don't require parking for golfers, and I have been to a few golf courses, and I know most people drive there, and they do tend to eat there too, but if everything were going at once, do you feel comfortable you have enough parking?
We will have a full parking lot when everything is going.
Okay.
So that's why when we were going through this, obviously, as I mentioned, my main concern when we purchased this was parking, is what are our plans to make sure that we manage that properly? And that's why we've got the valet. We will initiate complimentary valet parking once we get to a certain capacity, which we'll know that. We're going to know when we're going to have capacity issues, and we'll manage that with the valet parking to help ease any concerns that we're going to have from having too many people. Mm-hmm. The worst thing for us would be for people to come in and not be able to park and leave. Yeah. That's not a good long-term strategy for us either. So we will make sure that that's clearly posted, that we're here don't worry about parking, we've got it, because we've got all the additional space for us to take cars to and bring them back. That is our plan when we get full capacity. And, hopefully that's our problem, right? That's our,
Oh, yeah.
we want to make sure that we're at capacity as best we can and properly service everyone too. So.
Thank you.
To continue that, the discussion around parking down near the maintenance facility, that's down that West Elm Street, is that correct?
I don't think there's a name for that. It's actually just a service drive that we.
So when you go down Colville to the north and take the left down to the service drive, that's where that?
Right on the L on Colville there, if you make a left, that would take you to our maintenance building.
Okay.
Also to the right there, we currently mow that down and use that sometimes for staff parking as well. That would also be an option for additional staff parking. We still have to deal with Walker to make sure that they're comfortable with that, but we would like to add 30 spaces there as another close parking, for us, more than anything else. So there's plenty of opportunity in that area, but yes, we wouldn't be parking on any residential street.
I think that's what my question was leading to, is it appears just from driving through and looking at, like, if I was going to show up to golf, I could kind of pull over onto O'Brien and park off the pavement, but on the side of the shoulder, like, how do we avoid parking along O'Brien and Colville there?
That's something we would have to manage. We've had it happen in the 2.5 years that we've been owners. I've seen cars there 3 times maybe, and then we have to go over and, ask them if they could please not park on the side of the street.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a curb there the whole way, so it's not convenient. As if I think about the curb, it's not easy to park there. You have to make an effort.
Yeah. The other question I had, and I think I commented on that west elevation that faces Colville with the lack of windows there, and I understand wanting to highlight the course. If you're going to go there for a banquet or a restaurant, you're going to want to sit on the course, so your back becomes the front and vice versa. But it still is, because of the layout that the architecture has chosen, or the architect has chosen, rather than have that hallway, which, like at Thornapple, goes from door to door, and you can put windows along it, you have restrooms on the, is there a possibility to flip that? I don't mean to, talk architecture right now, but I mean, that's why the windows are not available on that west side, which really does, that's a pretty prominent view as you drive through there. If you're just driving down the road, it's going to be right there in your face.
I think it's appropriate only because we'll landscape it properly. I know we haven't discussed that, but we don't want a big wall. And if you go back to the one screen that shows the kitchen, there's 3 windows we put in there. We could add additional windows there, but the idea there would be to probably get so as you're looking at here, we'll get this landscape properly as well as this so that we want it to blend in. We don't want this to be also a big building. Same with parking. We don't want to over park. No one wants to see a wall of asphalt. So we're trying to fit this into the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood golf course, really. We are part of the neighborhood, so we want it to be an appropriate look as well. And we're very conscious of that too. This is actually kind of similar to Thornapple because it's a similar setup. You walk in, the bathrooms are on both sides. There's windows above the bathroom, just like there are here. And then the kitchen is off to the side, just like it is here. It's almost exactly the same. This actually probably has more windows than it does facing the road. Honestly, in Thornapple's clubhouse, on the right-hand side as we're looking at it is the golf shop, and there's 3 windows that face the front.
Yeah.
I don't really have, I think it would be because of where we're trying to get our uses, it's hard to add additional windows on that side. I would rather, if it was appropriate with you guys, is to landscape that to where it looked better. That would be the way to counteract that, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know what this process allows for as it relates to landscaping, but the landscape plans that you've submitted just show sedum along there, which would not do any type of screening.
Yeah, and we would not do that. That was just a throw together, I think, from Mark on what we put there. You're looking at hydrangeas, I think, in there. We can step that in so it's higher. We can put, flowering crabs. There's a lot of things that we can do, and luckily we're a golf course, so that's a specialty on our end. And I would be happy to come back with something if you needed it, or if, we might need some approval from you on that to make sure that it gets the look that you want. That's easy on our end. If you've been by recently, you probably have noticed with flowers along the way, and we've added a clock and more flowers. We're trying to add to that's a selling point, so we want to make sure that we look good.
Okay.
And I don't know if any of you have driven by, you can see we added that little walk-in that'll be reconfigured. That's gone. You won't even see that anymore. It'll fit the architecture. And once this is completed, so I think you may have asked about the restaurant as it was. That's not going to service any food service any longer. So we're eliminating that as a food service point.
Oh, okay.
That'll service as a golf shop. Offices will have restrooms, just like there is now. So we're eliminating what is already, I think, a 60-person capacity food service. We're eliminating a 120 capacity pavilion and replacing it with what we're doing now.
Okay.
And I would think of the patio as less of a three-season room and more of a covered patio. Originally when we started, it wasn't covered, and we wanted to cover for elements because people want to be outside, not be in the sun. Luckily, with the orientation of this building, west is behind you. No one will be in the sun. As they overlook the golf course, it'll be in the sun. It really should be really a great place to hang out. I mean, that's what we're counting on.
Okay.
Can we talk about the hours
Yes.
of operation? Because there's a few different things going on here. The banquet facility, so the restaurant's operating it opens at 11 a.m. For the banquet facility, is that 11 a.m. as well?
Unlikely. I mean, that's based on, banquets are so, if we have an event, I mean, we could have a morning event theoretically. Someone wants to come into town and do a 200-person meeting that starts at 8 in the morning.
Sure.
We would accommodate that.
Okay.
So I want to be clear on that too.
Okay,
So there's
that's
no-
fine.
Full transparency on all this. We don't plan actually to have the restaurant open until 11 either.
Okay.
This is not a bar. I want to make
Okay.
that clear. This is not a bar. This is a
So-
restaurant.
So we have the banquet facility, the events ending by midnight, the facility vacated by 12:30 a.m. Is that correct? Okay, and then the hours of operation for the restaurant, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Thursday.
Yeah, I don't anticipate us being open to 11. I think when you put together something like this, you go for the most expanded and get that way you can work off of that rather than the other way. I don't want to say 9 and then we're
Right.
10.
Okay.
I would just say to be reasonable on that. Yeah, I don't want my staff there at 11, honestly. So I would think that 10 o'clock, that's a normal closing time for restaurants. I mean, we're looking at this in a similar fashion to like a West Side Social, which is, we'll have a similar menu, similar outlook as that. So to give you an idea what this will be.
Okay, and then how about the outdoor seating? Are those hours going to be consistent with the restaurant
Yes.
hours?
Yeah, that's restaurant support. I mean, really, it's just an extension of the restaurant. I wouldn't look at it as separate.
Okay. And then,
I mean, the restaurant itself is actually very small. Really, we're kind of promoting outdoor space on this. I honestly think this is going to be more of a lunch spot. I mean, we're 5 minutes up the road. It took me 6-7 minutes to get there from here. So we think people will come out of here, meet there, easy parking, easy to come back to the office. I anticipate this to be a pretty good lunch crowd,
okay.
being the primary function, I would guess.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? All right, thanks, Chris. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today about this case, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us.
Hello, I'm Brian Bogard. I'm a neighbor. I live 2 houses down from the golf course. Pardon my ignorance of proper protocol, but I'm opposed to this, and here's why. When the sale of the golf course happened, I don't remember what year, a couple years ago, immediately they went to 7 days a week being open. Okay, fine, that's his business, he can do that. The hours gradually get longer and longer and longer. Even in the winter, with snow on the golf course, if it's a decent day, there's actually people out there golfing. Okay? Every once in a while, you get the Caddyshack horn. I'm not against Caddyshack. Everybody loves Caddyshack. But when you're blowing the Caddyshack horn 5, 6, 8 times, that's not cool. We can hear that. We're right next door. this restaurant banquet facility, they're very concerned with parking. He thinks that's his biggest problem. I think I'm his biggest problem because I think the biggest problem is going to be noise. Because this is the banquet facility, in theory, is going to close at midnight. The restaurant is in theory going to close at 11. Everybody here has been to a wedding. These things go and go and go. The music is blaring. It's in a ravine. Everybody knows what ravines do to sound, as our wonderful president reminded us, as the Grand Canyon is the 9th wonder of the world, he says. Think about it, there's only 7. It's going to enhance all that sound even worse to who knows what hour. Also not cool. So I realize that he's just trying to run his business. I get it, he's a businessman. This is a very, very, I'm not keeping track of my time. This is a very residential area. That's all it is residential with the golf course. Great. That's part of the reason why I moved there. Got the Kent Trails, golf course. This is not a good fit for a banquet venue. There's going to be noise all the time. Now, I don't know if the commission is responsible for the helicopter rides that have recently been passed, but that's also a pain in the butt.
All right. Thank you, sir. Your time's up. Just for clarity, do you live to the north of the golf course then?
I live, yes, to the north, about 2 houses down.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And no, we're not responsible for the helicopters.
Good.
Just so you know. Anyone else here about this case? All right. I'll close the public hearing. I don't know if maybe there's anything you want to address in there. Otherwise, if the commission has other questions for the applicant at this time.
I think, as part of that, we want to be very respectful to the neighborhood. Again, our ultimate plan is actually to move, because we have some lots on the north end that are undeveloped. At some point, we plan to live there. So as living there, we would obviously want to respect the neighbors as we would be one of them. But yeah, I understand his concerns as well, and we'll respect those. I mean, we're not going to go past any of the times that we've asked. I think that's not any different really than how we're operating currently. So we're not looking for a major change, and I understand about the banquet piece as well. If there's any concerns in the future, we would certainly address those. But we are going to be respectful to the neighborhood, that's all. So, yeah. Do you guys have any questions on that?
I just want to confirm that there's no plan of outside entertainment or music or anything like that.
Not as part of the banquet area?
Banquet or the restaurant.
I mean, if we're not permitted to have, we'd like to do Thursday night, not bands, but acoustic style, outdoor music. If that's not an appropriate use, then we would not do that, obviously. But again, full disclosure, I just want to let you know that people like to come and listen to someone playing music on a patio. Nothing that would be loud and that would face to the south, which there's no development. So.
Thank you.
Mark, can you come up to the microphone here, please? Can you talk a little bit about soundproofing the building itself? Have there been any thoughts of that with live music going on inside and such?
If we keep the doors closed, that would be the soundproofing.
Okay.
But at the same time, where we're located, we're on the south side of the golf course. The north side is quite a distance away. There's actually 2 neighbors on O'Brien. Those are the 2 houses that are close to where the clubhouse is going to be. Any sort of noise is going to be projecting off the back of the building, and that would be towards the golf course, which if straight to the east is the highway, and then on the other side is John Ball Park. The northern neighbors are it's quite a distance away. There are, I guess the closest one would be on Colville. And even still, that it's hundreds of feet away. I can't tell you exactly how many. I bet maybe close to 1,000 feet away from where we're building.
And Chris, is there any way to control the Caddyshack horns that are
I honestly
blaring?
I don't know what he's referring to. I've never heard a horn.
Okay,
We do not sound off any noises from the golf course itself.
okay.
So I'm not sure what he's referring to.
No shotgun starts or anything for outings and that kind of stuff.
Do nothing of that. We do
Yeah.
not use horns. The carts now have GPS and all.
Sorry, can you thank you.
Sorry. Our carts, we've equipped them with GPS now, and we do all of our messaging through those, so as not to have any additional sound. Yeah, but one of the other things, I guess, let me address sound. By putting this building in, we'll convert from gas carts that make sound to electric carts that make no sound. So we're going to actually decrease the sound in the area by going from a gas car that every time you hit it, it's a gas engine, to an electric car that makes zero noise. So theoretically, in his area, which is probably 1,500 feet north of the golf course, there should be less sound for him because there's no longer going to be golf carts making noise. So, we plan to do that, obviously, in the year following the completion of the building, because we can't do it until it's done, so.
All right, discussion on this?
I understand the concern about the noise from the neighbors. However, I also understand that as part of, running a golf course, these types of operations are influenced by people, the more demand for events and restaurants and places for people to relax after they've golfed. I've done it. Pretty sure a lot of us have up here too. So I understand that piece of it. I feel like the applicant has really thought through a lot of the concerns here. I'm open though to discussion about the times of operation. I'm comfortable with the way it is, but if anyone else wants to discuss that, seems to be an issue.
I'm also okay with the hours of operation. I'm not too concerned about them.
I think the banquet and the activity is on the southernmost corner, which is far removed. I'm used to seeing golf courses that have housing backing up to a lot of the different holes. So I think by having it down in that corner, you're really concentrating it. It's a long distance away. And I think that would certainly minimize the travel of sound north when you're facing west and south.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with the hours of operation and overall comfortable with the proposal. I think per my previous comments, I think I would like to see potentially the parking lot, potentially that corner better landscaped and screened, maybe brought that up to current landscape requirements for parking. But otherwise, I think I'd be comfortable with it.
Yeah, in terms of the use, I'm in support of this. I think the location does make sense. There's a buffer between most of the residential in this area. I think it's a nice amenity for folks that already come to the golf course. Obviously, I think the golf course is a great amenity for the west side. We don't have many left, and the west side has lost several, not in the city necessarily, although we've lost one in the city, but a couple others in neighboring municipalities. And I think, it's important to try to keep these around. So if this is a way that we can the community can support this business, I think it's good. And I do think it's an amenity that I'd like to see here in the city rather than, neighboring areas. So I'm in support of it.
One more thing that I wanted to address was the discussion around the live entertainment outdoors. If it's just zero, no, none live entertainment, or will we allow for
Non-amplified, perhaps?
non-amplified?
Would that require a renotice?
I did include in the notice live entertainment, but the application itself did not talk about
Outdoor.
outdoor live entertainment.
So do we have the discretion to allow for a non-amplified outdoor or not? I suppose is the question. Mr. Hooker is saying yes.
You did include it in there, and I think given that the scope of the live entertainment is intended to be relatively minimal, I think that would be acceptable.
Yes. Mr. Attorney? Okay, yes.
It's been advertised.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I don't know where you were heading with wanting that discussion. I guess
And just.
I'm
wanted some
comfortable with
clarity.
a non-amplified outdoor. If that changed in the future where they were trying to bring the DJ outside, then maybe you should come back for that, please. Great.
I got a question for the non-amplified versus amplified. Could we just explain that? Do you just mean amplified, and if you got a mic and a speaker, is that considered amplified?
I'm sorry, a mic.
If you have a mic and an amp, is that considered?
Yeah, anything powered by electricity, yes. Acoustically, that would be okay.
Got you. Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, just wanted to be clear.
Can I ask a question on that? We already are going to have speakers within the building, which are standard. Could they utilize those speakers? I'm not looking, I just want to make sure I'm clear with you. I mean, I'd rather do that now than come back and.
Fair question.
Inside the building
No.
or as part of like your outdoor seating, having speakers incorporated into whatever this canopy,
Yeah, because we'll have, standard background music playing.
ambient
Yes.
music.
Right.
Not amplified, as in pushed by large amps, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're talking, I don't know how many of you have seen live music. Like, let me get Watermark. I mean, I did work for Redwater for a while. They had live music on Thursday nights. I mean, I don't know if you know Tony Reynolds is fantastic. It's literally a guy sitting there playing music. It's not a rock concert. I mean, nobody wants that when they're having dinner. That changes the atmosphere. I mean, and whatever you say is fine. We'll pull back from that if that's what you want. But it's more of atmospheric music than. And we can put that in however you want or not have it. I just want to make sure we're clear so we do it properly again, too.
Yeah, I think that's part of my question too. If they've got speakers that play both inside and outside, would it be considered amplified if those speakers are outside, although it's just background house noise? And if I'm playing an instrument where I need a speaker,
I think it's the difference between, environment and like conversational level of noise versus is this entertainment, versus just ambiance. And yeah, I think house speakers built into a structure that you're intended to have conversation over, I don't have an issue with those or with those being utilized for an acoustic guitar and a singer, where you're bringing in extra amps and monitors and all that. I think that's the difference. So I'm comfortable with one, not the other. No, unfortunately not.
So we have allowed in the past amplified sound on patios. That is, I'm sorry, we have in the past allowed for amplified sound on patios for restaurants. So that is.
Meaning speaker.
Speaker, yes.
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 Elizabeth has a question.
we have a suggestion that we've used in the past, that any music or amplified sound on the patio shall not be heard above the ambient sound of the surrounding area. We've used that in the past. Usually it's in a more urban setting, but,
Yeah,
might
what
be a
is,
start to this discussion, something like that.
I just feel like there's tons of gray area. I'm thinking of the freeway there, right? You're on a golf course, there's a lot of open space. You got a freeway there. And yeah, I think we all understand some background kind of just chill music while you're, trying to have dinner, but it's so vague, there's a lot of space there. Where you can, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should use, their speakers to sing and play my guitar, or I can't bring my own amp. And in that instance, what would be the difference? If they got Kenmore speakers, then you'll still hear it up the block. So I think just, it's just fake.
I guess I'm not that worried about it. We talked a lot about speakers in more urban areas than this. And given the size of the facility, the outdoor part of it, just common sense is you're not going to want to have a rock band out there while people are having dinner. So I don't feel a big threat here with the noise. And if the noise is too loud, people would make complaints. And then we'd send out the decibel police, so good at measuring. But I'm being facetious, obviously, there. But I really think the size of the space and others that we've, reviewed will limit the amount of sound you would want in operating that space.
Yeah, I agree with, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I 100% agree with that. I think to one of the points that you brought up, though, there's no recourse. If this noise is loud, or if it's loud enough to be heard, and there's no rule in place saying that you can't do this, or it's vague, then what's the recourse for the residents if they decide, okay, this one Thursday, because, it's July 4th, let's just have the rock band, right?
Wouldn't it be the same recourse we had if we lived next to a resident, or a party house, or, you just...
I think we have better control here because we can use Elizabeth's suggestion about the ambient noise. Maybe that's measured at the street, and per the testimony of the owner operator that this is his intention. So if there is a complaint, we can go back to what this discussion was. We can make it part of the, in our findings of fact here, that this is what was intended to be done. And if it becomes more than that, then we have more teeth to say, this is what you committed to. Anything else? Okay. Are you ready to make a motion? Was that what I heard you say?
Now I mean it. This is the last one. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of Mines Golf Club LLC, Chris Sobiek. Is that?
Close enough.
For a banquet facility and restaurant with outdoor seating and alcohol service in association with an existing golf course at 330 Colville Avenue Southwest for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the vitality of the local economy by encouraging investment and consumer spending. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.08.e because the site layout and building elements have met the requirements for the SDOS zone district. The proposed uses will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, because this use will be consistent with the desired character of this area. Potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use will be minimized because the provision of adequate parking, including valet operations when necessary for large events and anticipated times of full capacity. The proposed uses will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to the existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, and glare, because the entertainment will be fully, well, do we need to strike this one? Because the entertainment will not be fully contained indoors? Do we need to?
Would be mostly contained.
I think we just take it out.
You can talk about the limits that you're proposing on entertainment.
Are those in, or do we leave those in the standard condition?
I mean, you can mention it here.
Okay.
And then you can also put it in the.
Okay.
I also think that entertainment associated with the banquet use will be limited to the indoor use.
Okay.
And I think that's where you're going to have more of an issue with sound.
All right, so.
The banquet use.
So entertainment will be fully contained indoors related to the banquet use. And then no concerns have been expressed about the proposed use.
I'd strike that.
Strike
and
that.
say that any entertainment, any outdoor entertainment would be limited to,
I have the live music should
Okay.
be limited to ambient level. Are we comfortable with that? Okay. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the conditions of the special land use approval will limit nuances that require nuisances that require police or code enforcement actions. Given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, it is demonstrated that the area is underserved by the proposed use, and that the proposed location for alcohol sales will demonstrably be an asset to the neighborhood because there are no other such facilities in the immediate vicinity, and banquet facilities and restaurants are commonly associated with golf courses and country clubs. The use or change in use as constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because the operator or designee will be on the premises during events. The use as proposed to be operated by the applicant will minimize or eliminate negative secondary effects on the neighborhood because the applicant has procedures prepared so that the use will be operated in a manner that has the potential to minimize or eliminate negative secondary effects on the neighborhood. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project on the screen, and I'll also read them. Standard conditions, set A, approvals that the application and plan submitted by the applicant and signed, dated and stamped by the planning director shall constitute the approved plans except if the plan elements do not meet ordinance requirements and/or as amended in this resolution. That the use shall operate according to the application and per testimony as recorded in the Planning Commission minutes. That this approval does not include any proposed signs, and any future signs shall be subject to the requirements of Article 15 of the ordinance and permits received prior to installation. That a land use development services, LUD's permit, building permit, and all other required permits be obtained from the City of Grand Rapids prior to construction, demolition, or operation. That an expansion of the approved special land use requires an additional special land use review and approval by the Planning Commission. That the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all state laws. That the approval shall take effect 16 calendar days after the date of the Planning Commission's decision. 2, the banquet facility shall cease, events shall cease by 12 midnight, and the facility vacated by 12:30 a.m. That the restaurant will operate 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Thursday through Saturday. let me read that again. That the restaurant will operate 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Wednesday, and 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Thursday through Saturday. That the outdoor seating will end by 10 p.m. 7 days per week. Are we comfortable with that? I'm not sure we addressed that directly. That music and dancing incidental to a private event may be permitted, but there shall be no events or ticket sales to the general public at which admission is charged at the door. Number 6, that there shall be no are we using Elizabeth's condition that you read earlier, or are we leaving it as live music should be limited to ambient levels? Anything?
They're pretty much the same.
Okay, then let's leave it at that. Live music should be limited to ambient levels outside. That the operator or his or her designee shall be on premise during all events. That the event space may accommodate up to 260 individuals, subject to occupancy determination by the city's building officials and applicable building and fire codes. And that an indoor events license shall be obtained from the office of the city clerk.
And parking lot landscaping be brought up to current standards.
Number 10, I did make notes of that, sorry about that. Parking lot landscaping adjustments,
The parking lot landscaping shall be brought closer to current standards.
what she said,
How about up to rather than closer?
up to what she said. All right, there we go.
No?
But the setback couldn't be met, but the landscaping could be? Or is that part of landscaping?
Is that part of landscaping?
That's not part of, that's not part of landscaping.
Okay.
But I don't know if we want it up to existing standards.
Closer might just be
Close.
one additional planting.
Okay.
What would be the challenge with up to?
Well, I think typically we try to work with the applicant to try to get closer to, and that's typically more than one planting.
That's fairly common wording, but you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
Technically, you're right.
We try to work.
Subject to staff approval?
Yeah,
is that-
subject to staff.
I have
Perfect.
subject to staff approval
Yeah, and
on
to your
my
point
notes.
about, Aaron, about landscaping in the front to address the transparency, I think that's important as well.
Okay.
Was that incorporated?
I don't think so. 11 is landscaping in lieu of,
Landscape to be placed in front of,
and placed in front of the windows on the west elevation
to mitigate the transparency requirements.
to mitigate the transparency requirements if you can't hear 'em.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any discussion? How's Carol feeling about that? Okay, that's the important thing.
Carol, call me if you need some help.
Okay, right,
Yes.
Slow clap.
that's it. All right, still supportive?
Yes.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break before our last couple cases.
You need it for after that.
747 Leonard Street Northwest, and Laura is going to take us through this case.
The next request is for 747 Leonard Street Northwest. The applicant is requesting approval to sell beer and wine for off-site consumption in association with an existing 24-hour convenience store and vehicle fueling station. 747 Leonard Southwest, the subject site is on this map shaded in green. It's at the northeast corner of Leonard and Alpine. The master plan, the 2002 master plan has the area designated as commercial traditional business area. It is within the West Side area specific plan, and it's identified as a transition gateway. And a transition gateway, areas that of more intense use are appropriate at a location that's identified as a transition gateway. It's in the TBA zone district, surrounded by TBA zone districts. Here it is on an overhead view. To the southwest is a bank. There's a bar directly to the east, adjacent to the property. My apologies. To the west is a bank. To the southwest is Walgreens. And then the building to the south across the street on Leonard is the neighborhood association and some other businesses on the ground floor, and there's some apartments above. Here's a site plan of the parcel as it exists. There are no site changes proposed. The building will stay exactly as it is. There's a single-story convenience store, 2 vehicle fueling canopies, and at the southwest corner of the site is a pole sign with a small landscape island. This is an elevation that shows what the shop, the convenience store, looks like from the outside. And this is the proposed floor plan for the addition of the alcohol use. Back to the site, there is no dumpster enclosure on the site. The Planning Commission may consider including a condition of approval requiring permanent trash enclosure to be incorporated as approved on a LUDS permit as part of approval, should the Planning Commission be amenable to approving. And the parking requirement for a retail store in this zone district, based on square footage, would require 6 parking spaces on this site, and the site appears to accommodate the required parking. Part of the alcohol use considerations are the location of the cash register. It must be visible from the entrance. On this floor plan, the cash register is located at the back of the store, which is not necessarily typical, but in this instance, because of the large amount of windows at the front of the store and the fact that the cash register and counter are on an elevated platform, it actually is provides the best visibility, not only for the store, but as you can see on the site plan, the way that the building the store is in is situated on the site. It gives good visibility to the site at the outside of the store as well. Our SEPTED specialist in the planning department and our SEPTED police officer, the police officer has been to the site and he's been in the store and he has reviewed this proposed floor plan, and he agrees. He said that this setup, while it doesn't necessarily meet what's typical, it is ideal for the store, and he is comfortable with this floor layout plan. From the register, you can see over the display racks and shelves between the register and the front windows. The store is a 24-hour store. The alcohol sales, if approved, would be limited from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. It would meet the state requirements for alcohol sales. At the register, there's a protective glass that can slide closed to help for the safety of employees during the overnight hours. So there are some measures that are in place to help for the protection of the employees. As far as alcohol, there are 2 doors of the cold vault by the walk-in cooler that will be dedicated for beer display. And there are 2 smaller coolers in front of the windows at the front of the store proposed. The coolers at the front of the windows aren't tall, they are short, so they block a little bit of the window, but not more than 25%. There are other measures in place with the store. There are video surveillance cameras in place both inside and out of the store. And a video surveillance system, you can see in this photo, there's a large screen so the customers can see that they are on camera, and that is already in place. Staff will be trained for alcohol sales. The cash register is a point-of-sale system that requires an ID to be scanned to complete a sale of alcohol. And staff is directed to routinely maintain the property. There are 2 establishments within 1,000 feet of this site that do also sell alcohol for off-site consumption. The Walgreens across the street at Leonard does sell alcohol. They are beer and wine. They are open until 9 p.m. And then it's not on this slide, it's just to the east on Leonard is Ralph's Grocery Store. They are also an SDM license holder for the sale of alcohol for off-site consumption. It is expected that the customers coming to the store to buy alcohol would be customers who are already going there for gas and other convenience store items. The applicant has met with the West Grand Neighborhood Association. The association has submitted a letter of support with a list of suggestions for the applicant to make some improvements on the site. They have already made quite a few improvements on the site. You can see the windows are relatively clear. The applicant understands that they will need to meet the SEPTED requirements for visibility and window coverings. The applicant has added some landscaping to the little island around the pole sign. It could be a condition of approval for the Planning Commission to add that this landscaping be maintained. And the applicant has added some parking lot striping to the site as well. Before I turn it over to the applicant, does the Planning Commission have any questions?
Thank you, Laura. Any questions at this time?
Laura, and that, just go right back one photo. It seems like some of the windows are currently obscured slightly. Is this additional coolers in that space, and would they be similarly obstructing windows?
I believe what's in front of these windows, the applicant can confirm, I think those are the coolers.
Those are the coolers in question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And, they still will need to meet the SEPTED requirements. There are requirements related to, that are stricter as far as window covering goes than the zoning ordinance is. So they'll need to have a separate SEPTED inspection and to meet those requirements. both the SEPTED officer and our specialist in the planning department didn't have any immediate concerns about those coolers at this time, but it would still, they would continue to, they would have a yearly inspection they would have to meet.
Sure, okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Laura. I'll invite the applicant up if there are other details you'd like to share with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Bhupinder Kaur, and I'm here speaking on behalf of my brother Shahzad Singh. So she did a great job summarizing everything. So I'm just going to run into the basics of our business. We are a gas station convenience store located at the corner of Leonard and Alpine. Prabjot Singh is our store manager. He is here with us as well. We have 2 cashiers at all times, with the third being Prabjot, who manages and runs the store, making sure everything is run smoothly, safely, and secure. We have just gotten a bulletproof countertop made for our cashiers to work through for their safety. They also have an alarm button located under their registers for any kind of urgent help. Our main priority is our customer safety along with our employees. So we have made various changes inside and outside of our business settings. Some examples of these changes include brand new camera systems with high definition surveillance to capture any blind spots circling inside and outside of our building. We also have a TV located at the front of our entrance that helps the cashier to see what is going on inside and outside. Having the TV also helps attract having the right customer base, which helps in lessening trouble since everything is vigilant and monitored. We believe that the market base we attract comes from how we portray and look from the outside. So we have done parking lot repairs that include patching, seal coating, and restriping of yellow lines, as well as arrows that guide the customers in and out of our parking lot. Furthermore, we have no parking signs painted at the front of our building so that the cashier can see out the windows clearly. This will eliminate any blockage and help guide drivers throughout the parking lot. Finally, another change that we have done at the store includes all window signs being removed, as well as any fridges and cooler removals. All of our windows are uncovered at this time with 100% ID check signs, as well as signs that say no underage smoking or drinking. Our cashiers check ID 100% of the time and must scan ID before selling to anybody. Our POS has all of those abilities. Today we are here because we are asking to use 2 existing doors of our cooler vault for beer and wine, along with a standalone 3-door cooler that will accommodate our variety packs and all of our beer suitcases. We have been heavily in touch with the West Grand Neighborhood Association, specifically Annette Vandenberg, for any changes that they needed for our business. We believe that they are satisfied and happy with all the changes that we have brought, hence their approval letter to keep this project going. If there are any other questions or concerns, Shahzad Singh will be more than happy to answer them. Thank you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I do have one question. I see in the application that you've received conditional approval for the SDM license from the MLCC. Can you tell us what conditions were set as part of that approval?
So in terms of MLCC, their conditions only consist of underage selling, having signs up, along with like over 21 years of age. We have so we have to go through a test, compatibility test to all our employees as well as myself. We have certificates that say that we are compliant with MLCC code. Those tests, they consist of they're about an hour long. They go through all the chapters of how we're supposed to be operating with all MLCC rules, regulations. And we all have passed those tests at this point. And anybody that we hire in terms of employee-wise, they cannot sell alcohol, cigarettes, or anything like that until they pass that test. So all my employees, at all our stores. I own about 38 stores throughout Northwest Michigan and Indiana. Indiana's not a big deal because we don't have beer or liquor inside stores like cold, but here we have all employees that are dedicated, and they have all their certificates listed within the stores. So they have to be compliant, and that is the only way that MLCC approves the conditional license, is if we send those back. And also, they make us take pictures of our POS system, making sure that it asks for ID 100% of the time. So anytime that I ring up let's say a 25 ounce or a suitcase or a cigarette, it's gonna prompt, hey, put the date of birth in or scan ID. Before, the issue was about a couple of years ago, you could neglect the system and press enter, so it'll go on to the next step. Now you can't do that. You have to scan ID. There's no way around it. And us having more than, a couple locations, we can't be everywhere. So we have to have a 100% rule. And MLCC is just, if they're honest, they're going to get honest one after the other store. So we have to be compliant with them 100% of the time.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today from the community and would like to share your thoughts on this, please come forward and state your name for the record. All right, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any discussion on this?
It wasn't too long ago that we were hearing many of these types of cases each session. But it's been a little while. In fact, they were so frequent that we would identify the area of the beer and wine compared to the size of the store to make sure that we weren't giving any particular store preferential treatment. In that context, this seems very much in line with what we've approved in the past, meaning a very ancillary part of the operation as constrained by the 2 doors and the 2 small coolers. So I would be in support.
I agree. I like the openness in the windows, and there don't seem to be a lot of obstructions even outside, so that it's very visible inside what's going on, even if you're driving by, I think.
Sorry. I don't have any reservations about moving forward with this.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know if it's in line with you guys, but the dumpster enclosure, we have somebody set for next month, Alto Fencing Company. They're from Michigan as well. They're going to be taking care of it, I think, next month. What day? On the 18th. So the dumpster enclosure will be done as well.
Great.
Yeah, they just didn't have dates, so that's the best available date.
Yeah, and that would be a part of the approval, so that's great.
If you could, just make sure that you submit the LUDs prior to installation of
Yes, I have that.
of the dumpster enclosure. Okay. We'll just need to review that and approve it prior to installation, and make sure you don't purchase anything until that's been approved.
We'll be all set.
Thank you.
No, I just wanted to, Paul can still do it, but I just wanted to just make note that, I appreciated the effort that you put in per the neighborhood association and the business association and what they asked of you. I think that's great. Thank you.
Now therefore it be resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of Leonard 23 Inc. Shahzad Singh for approval to sell wine and beer for off-site consumption in association with an existing 24-hour convenience store and vehicle fueling station at 747 Leonard Street Northwest for the following reasons. The proposal will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the vitality of the business district by continuing to provide a mix of uses and strengthen the existing development patterns and intensity at an intersection identified as a transition gateway as recommended in the West Side Area Specific Plan. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment. Because a 24-hour convenience store and vehicle fueling station are already established at this location, and the addition of packaged alcohol is not expected to impact the existing use. Proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because adequate parking will be provided, landscaping will be incorporated and maintained on the site where practicable, because the building entrance is oriented to allow for maximum visibility on the site. And because SEPTED design principles have been incorporated. Proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, smoke, odors, glare, and visual clutter, because the addition of packaged alcohol sales is expected to be an amenity for existing customers and increase in traffic is not anticipated. Proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because adequate transparency will be provided and because the building and site layout are not proposed to change. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability or economic welfare of the city because the use is not anticipated to result in nuisances that require code enforcement actions. Given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, has demonstrated that the area is underserved by the proposed use, and that the proposed location for alcohol sales will demonstrably be an asset to the neighborhood because, as proposed, the use is expected to be an amenity for existing customers, which is unique compared to other establishments in the vicinity offering packaged alcohol for off-site consumption. Use or change in use as constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because the addition of alcohol sales will not materially change the operation of the store. And the use as proposed to be operated by the applicant will minimize or eliminate negative secondary effects on the neighborhood because an adequate operations plan and training will be in place. The operation is expected to be in compliance with the SEPTED ordinance. And the applicant has already implemented property improvements suggested by the West Grand Neighborhood Association that includes elements of landscaping, security, property maintenance, visibility, and accessibility. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A. And that the area of alcohol sale shall be consistent with the submitted floor plan, being 2 doors of the cold vault and 2 additional small coolers. That a LEDS permit shall be obtained to include a permanent trash enclosure to be constructed and placed in accordance with Section 5.2.13 of the zoning ordinance, and that the use shall comply with the requirements of the crime prevention through environmental design ordinance.
Second.
All right, motion and support, discussion.
The landscaping piece should be added, landscaping to be maintained on the exterior. Was it in the?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah. Do we want it in the conditions as well?
No.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. The last case is 2480, 2492, 2500, and 2520 Lake Michigan Drive Northwest. Elizabeth will walk us through this case.
Okay, so Covenant Living of the Great Lakes is a senior living community that offers a continuum of care for its residents. Residences range from independent senior apartments to assisted living and skilled nursing care. And you can see on this slide here the existing improvements on the campus. The applicant is proposing their next phase of development on the adjacent 3 parcels. And that will consist of 18 duplex buildings, a total of 36 dwelling units, and an expansion of a surface parking lot. For the purposes of this analysis and publication, I called this multiple family because they're on separate parcels and they are independent living, and there aren't any common services for the entire campus on these parcels. So, and because there's no assisted living or any of that kind of group living type use, I thought it was easiest and most straightforward just to call it multiple family. All of those other uses that I mentioned, assisted living or skilled nursing, those are all special land uses too. So, but just I've sort of addressed it through the lens of multiple family. The property is located in the MON LDR zone district, Modern Era Neighborhood Low Density Residential Zone District. The entire campus is about 38 acres. And let's see here, the 3 parcels under consideration today are about 10 acres, I believe. Actually, I'd like to go back. We have low-density residential to the north, Shawmut Hill School. We do have a residence immediately to the east. Here's the house. And then we have some condos further east, a church, other lower-density residential. This is the proposed site plan. North is to the right. So as you can see, the attached, attached single family or duplex units, they're to be arranged around common courtyards. Underneath those courtyards will be stormwater detention vaults. A ring road is proposed. Well, I guess, internal drives are proposed that will lead to the garages for each of the units. The buildings are actually oriented inward toward those courtyards. This is the south, the parking lot that's shown there, that was approved back in, I think, 2017 as a special land use. I'm sorry, 2013. And then in the northern part of the property, subsequent to Covenant's purchase of these properties, they obtained approval to demolish the existing single-family home on the lot. So in addition to what's being proposed here, we've got a new parking lot proposed. Of 24 parking spaces. I'd like to also mention the existing retirement community consists of 189 independent living units, 63 assisted living units, and 37 skilled nursing units. So what's being proposed are the 36 independent living dwelling units. So the subject property, as you can see from the aerial photo, is significantly wooded, especially in the back. There were homes right up at the front, and there's a little clearing there where the homes were. But the remaining area is heavily wooded. It also contains a ravine, so as you can see on this slide, again, north is to the right, there is, a ravine at the back there. The site plan is to stay out, the site plan does not encroach into any steep slopes, which is considered 20% grade or greater. So anything in the green here is a natural steep slope of 20% or greater, and so they won't be doing any work in the steep slopes. The red are also steep slopes, but these are man-made steep slopes. This area, the slopes were from the driveway of the home that was there, and this slope has to do with grading from construction. So those aren't slopes that we're really taking into consideration for the purposes of this development. This is the tree survey. There are lots of trees on the site, as I mentioned. So this identifies all the trees by number and their condition. I'll go over that. Well, I guess it's here, so I might as well go over it now. The tree survey shows over 833 trees in the area proposed for development. The surveyor actually, included a number of trees on the adjacent property in that. Of all those trees, approximately 305 trees are identified as being in poor condition and 84 trees are dead. So those are trees that the applicant could remove at any time. If they're dead or dying, you are allowed to remove them. Let's see here. This slide shows the, this kind of cloud edge shows the tree line and the area where all the trees will be removed. So all the trees in the area, in this shaded area, are to be removed. Additionally, some of the trees in the former home site, this is a little flatter, and this is where the home was. So a number of these trees are proposed to be removed as well. I did go through and identify, well, let me back up here. The tree survey identified a number of trees that were recommended for preservation. And those were recommended for preservation based on their uniqueness, the species, their quality, or their size. And there were 100 trees on this site that were identified as recommended for preservation. 64 in the area of disturbance. 64 of those trees recommended for preservation are in the area to be disturbed or removed as part of this. And then there's 6 trees along the edges that I'm not sure if they're intended to be removed or not, just because of their location. For instance, the tree right here, I couldn't really tell what's going to happen to that tree. But in sum, there are a number of trees that are proposed to be removed that their tree surveyor has identified or recommended for preservation. And I've zoomed in here. I highlighted all of the ones that meet that criteria, okay? So those are high-quality trees that would be removed. There are also a number of high-quality trees. I know there are. Okay, there are some high-quality trees that are not going to be removed, but in the area that of disturbance, we'll be losing some nice trees. Our tree preservation requirements does establish that trees are a resource, okay, that should be protected if possible. They're a site asset, and as we know, there's climate change. It helps with stormwater. The trees absorb stormwater. So, we want to preserve healthy trees wherever possible. And that our tree preservation regulations says that all efforts shall be taken in site design to preserve healthy trees. Additionally, we want to ensure that trees off-site are not damaged. You'll notice here that a number of trees near the lot line are proposed for removal. So I do want to ask the Planning Commission then to consider, as part of this discussion, whether all reasonable efforts have been undertaken in the layout of the site to avoid unnecessary removal of trees, as well as the extent to which the layout may affect trees on the adjacent property. So I would ask the applicant to please talk about why, the steps here that you've taken. The zoning ordinance does allow, let's see here, I had the section here. Now where did it go? The zoning ordinance does allow for the removal of trees for payment in lieu. If a lot of trees are being removed and can't be replaced on site, they can do payment in lieu or work with the city forester to plant them somewhere else in the city. So that might be an option too. We've done this a couple of times. I can think of 3 occasions where we've worked with applicants on that. So I think those are some things that we'll want to explore in a little more detail. Along with that is a retaining wall. And the retaining wall at its highest point is proposed to be 20 feet in height. Okay, so as I mentioned, the site, there is a ravine, the site slopes. The applicant is staying out of any steep slopes, but they do propose, they will need to do some fill in order to ensure a level construction surface. Now, we did, our zoning ordinance does require that retaining walls should be, it really should be no more than 3 feet in height and should be tiered. Now, that's not always feasible. And we did talk to the applicant about whether that could be done. The applicant will be able to speak to that. But in general, my understanding is what's being proposed here will minimize further encroachment into the tree line. It will preserve additional trees. So that should be something that that you should explore as well. The Planning Commission does have the discretion to grant a retaining wall of this height, as long as that that there won't be detriment to neighboring properties. And due to topography, natural features, or other site-related issues, that the requirements can't be satisfied. So I'd ask the Planning Commission to deliberate about that as well. As far as traffic and site circulation, all the improvements here are proposed to be private. Okay, these are, private, private drives, private sidewalks, and the entrance to the new phase of development would be off of a private street. So the applicant would be responsible for constructing and maintaining all that. We did, the applicant did have a traffic study prepared, and it has been reviewed by Mobile GR, which concurs with the findings of the study. Really, there'll be no impact or very little impact on the street network, and any impact would actually be on the site. The impact is, a few second increase in the delay to access Lake Michigan Drive from the private road. So little to no impact on the public street network. As far as stormwater and sedimentation control goes, because of the slope, I should probably use a grading plan. Because of that slope there, down in the ravine, there will be robust measures will be needed to protect the slopes from erosion and pollution, and the applicant's engineer is aware of that. Additionally, this is not something that we come across very frequently, but additional stormwater storage may be required for the site because of the number of trees that have been removed, and the applicant has been made aware of that. If you have any specific questions about stormwater or grading, we do have our stormwater project engineer here today to address any questions you may have. I'll let the applicant talk about any of the floor plans, but every unit will have a two-car garage, so there'll be on-site parking for each of the units. The parking requirement will be, satisfied, exceeded here. All the buildings are, designed to meet the MON LDR standards. They are to be, I have now forgotten what the building materials are. Fiber cement lap siding with board and batten elements, and as well as stone veneer trim. All exceed the transparency requirements. And as I mentioned before, the front doors are oriented to those common courtyards. Lastly, the applicant has provided a summary of neighborhood engagement that's in the packet. We also did receive a letter from the owner, the owner and resident of the adjacent property to the east. That house is approximately here, where I'm pointing to, and I can measure it, but I have forgotten what distance it is from the lot line. It's fairly close. It's not shown on any of the plans, but I can show you going back to the aerial photo. It's for such big properties, it's fairly close to that lot line. So that's something that the Planning Commission might want to keep in mind. So in sum, we're looking at 36 dwelling units, an expansion of Covenant Village, or Covenant Living of the Great Lakes. I think the most critical elements are impact to the tree canopy, that retaining wall, and the impact on the neighboring property. Do you have any questions for me before I turn it over to the applicant?
Any questions for Elizabeth? All right, thanks. I'll invite the applicant up if there are other details you'd like to share with us.
I'll pull up your presentation here for you. Okay. All right, there you go. I'll take this one, but you can use this.
And then
or
just use
there.
the arrow?
Yep,
Okay,
or
great.
this. And then you can, if you need to point something out, you can use the cursor there.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Randy Gross. I'm the Vice President of Project Development. I work for Covenant Community Living and Services, and I'm based out of Chicago. I've been with Covenant for about 13 years, and it's a really amazing place to work. After about a week since I've been here, I thought, what a great place to land. And my job is to improve the lives of seniors through building facilities. So it's a pretty fun job. So anyway, I'll get into the presentation. All right, so as we talked about earlier, this is an expansion of 36 duplex homes, so 18 buildings, but 36 units. I have with me Jose, who's with THW, the architect, and then local Steve is with Progressive A&E. He's a civil engineer and going to talk in more detail. Okay, so the history of Covenant, we've been around for over 100 years. We have locations in 11 states, and we have 15 communities just like this, which are continuing care retirement communities. And what that means, and we talked about it a little bit, is you could come into the community and be fully independent as you need, or as your spouse needs more help. One could be in assisted living, one could be living independent living, one could be in skilled nursing, and you could still be on the same community. So it works out really well as you transition, as you age, and you need more options. So we provide several options for all levels of care. And this new product actually gives us kind of one more option. So we've been here in Grand Rapids since 1998. Construction started right after that. We started with the buildings. We have several buildings, A through E, and a big town center in there with a pool and a couple of restaurants. We have 63 assisted living units, 37 skilled nursing, and we also have some assisted living memory care units, so if you need memory care. We're at 189 independent living units right now, like we said earlier, and this would give us additional 36. Okay, so why are we expanding? To provide, expanding another option for seniors. So sometimes when people come into our communities, they're living in a house, they don't want to come directly into an apartment. So this provides one more level where they can come in and they can still be in kind of like a home, a duplex. It's all on one level. They have their own garage instead of being in an apartment and having a garage underneath. This, we're going to add more outdoor living, experiences for the residents, all these parkways and walkways through the community to make the community quite a bit more walkability and give them places to walk through the community. Offering it something separate from the main campus. And this is also to improve our community's edge. Like right now, there's 6 other continuing care communities in the area, and they all have this product, which we don't have right now. We just have apartments. You come directly into an apartment. And it's also to improve the financial sustainability of the entire campus. So generally, we like to have the community with about 300 independent living units or to get closer to that. This will get us closer to that number and help us support, with 36 more units, will help us support the staff and attract better staff into the communities and better financial sustainability within the campus. I mean, there's a lot of CCRCs that go under, that don't continue to invest and don't do things strategically and go bankrupt or end up being sold, and we don't want to be in that position. We want to remain competitive. Okay, so what have we done so far? So Actually, I think even prior to COVID, we met with the city to kind of overall discuss our plans, and then everything was kind of stopped for a while, and we kind of put it on hold as we were, just as every other business was just trying to survive. And then we came back to the plan, and we've done the traffic study. We've done the tree study, which you saw, which is so extensive. It's amazing how we've tagged every tree, and we're very conscious of what we're going to do with the trees and open to options of what we can do. We've done our steep slope studies, and we do have some steep slopes on the property where we can't build there, which is fine. So we really tried to study the most effective way to utilize the property, and that's what we came up with the design. We had a neighborhood meeting and met with our residents and told our residents of the plan and made some modifications per our residents to make the plan a little bit more walkability. And then we've collected some neighbor concerns. So we had on June 13th, we met with the neighbors, and we also met with the residents earlier that day. And of course, the biggest concern is the neighbor to the east of us with, she's looking at a forest right now, and now we're going to be developing in that area. So we're very sensitive to that and going to do everything we can to buffer her property from ours to make it as painless as it can be. We heard issues of noise that we've addressed, and that's mainly pickup times and from a dumpster standpoint. And it was also noise from our employees because we do work around the clock. So it was some of our employees in skilled nursing and assisted living. They go outside on break and make a little noise. So we've been addressing that. And then there were some concerns about the traffic, even though we've done a traffic study. We may want to come back and revisit the pacing of the lights and meet with the city and talk to the transportation department and see if it makes sense when you're turning into the community, if the lights are signaled, east and west of us, if that could be looked at. And then with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and he's a civil engineer with Progressive, local civil engineer, and he'll talk more about the project.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're looking here, and I think Elizabeth did a fantastic job kind of walking you guys through the site plans that were submitted as part of the package. And again, looking at kind of the aerial photo of the site. I do want to point out the neighbor there, and I'll kind of show you briefly how that aligns with the proposed development. So this is that layout, and that house, we did put it on our drawings after we completed the topo survey. It actually falls almost perfectly in line with the kind of the courtyard concept between those units. One other thing I want to point out, so we have these kind of two ring roads that go through the development. That east portion of that ring road is primarily for fire department access. It's not anticipated that residents would use it because there's really no convenience for them to use it. They're going to pull down the street that their garage or unit is on and pull into their driveway. For them to continue on down the street and then pull onto that north-south road would be inconvenient and not really serve them a purpose. So that road was designed for fire department access. But I think the point being that neighbor won't see a tremendous amount of traffic, if any at all, on that road there. And the roads are offset enough that there shouldn't be much of any cars shining toward that house as they pull down the road. It also would be our intent that we preserve as much of that. The one tree removal plan Elizabeth shared showed going to that east property edge. We've since scrutinized that road design, the grades of it, and the trees throughout that zone, and feel comfortable we can actually save some of those higher quality trees along that buffer. So our intent would be is trying to provide saving as much as we can through that east property line, and then enhancing it as much as possible through a robust landscape plan. Elizabeth did a good job explaining the tree survey that was done by an outside consultant, and they did identify trees that they defined as worthy of preservation. I don't believe that's anything that's spelled out in the ordinance that way. That was their interpretation of it through size, uniqueness, and health. It's our intent to follow the canopy requirements spelled out within the ordinance. And again, we'll have a very robust landscape plan. Ideally, we would meet that fully on site. So again, we're trying to develop that plan to fully comply and provide adequate tree plantings on site. And again, we are proposing the retaining wall on the south end to help preserve that ravine as much as possible. And it is a true statement that if we begin to tier it, that just starts to eat further and further down into that slope, including additional tree removals and potentially getting into some more steeper slopes. That wall would be composed of, it's called an MSE wall, a mechanically stabilized earth wall. It's vegetated on the face of it. There won't be a lot of opportunity to see it because it's high on the home side and low as you go down the ravine. So it really should blend in fairly nicely with the existing vegetation of the ravine. It'll be a green wall. So even if somebody were on the other side of it or down on the other property looking toward it, it won't stand out as a block or concrete wall. It'll blend in nicely as kind of a green wall. That's kind of the layout. This, and I think the plans showed it better, this is an existing north-south road that runs through the development, and then each of these are intended to be private roads to serve the units. There will be public utilities that run through there, so we'll have easements over those. And then kind of a really nicely enhanced courtyard space between them. You can kind of think of front porches kind of facing each other to kind of create that somewhat walkable community, that feel of a walkable community. This is it, kind of an enlargement plan of it, and there's concepts, and Jose can speak to this, for different unit types that could be somewhat interchangeable depending on how sales go. But the intent would be that there's kind of a mix of different unit types and different aesthetics to some of those. And that I'll turn over to Jose. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'll just back up one. The three main drivers of the layout is, one, as Randy said, create a new and an additional living opportunity on campus, which they don't have, and provide that level of additional variety of how residents can come to the community. Specifically, number two is creating a walkable community, which allows for folks here to not only interconnect with each other, neighbors facing across a common park. So each one of these neighborhoods will have a landscaped, developed park with walking paths, and each neighborhood is interconnected with the other, and they can actually meander all the way back to the clubhouse. So it promotes walkability. It promotes a more well living. And then third is about the variety of the unit types. One of the things that anyone that sees has a negative reaction to is when you have a neighborhood that each unit looks the same. It's problematic, and it's not appealing. So our intention is we've created 4 different unit types, and they are all combined differently. So even within the the color-coded version here, you can see that there are different units that are connected to each other in different places, intentionally to give folks that variety and create a dynamic residential feel as you walk down the street. Each unit has, in some cases, they're reversed plans. In other cases, they're totally different plans, but they're all based on an open concept, both for accessibility at this age range. That's very important, but it's also a very desirable living arrangement. You hear it all the time on TV, having an open concept house. So following through with that, that's what we were intending here. And this is just an example where you've got two units adjacent to each other, and for each type of combination, the colors would be different, the materials would be consistent, just to provide a continuous thread throughout the overall community. But you can have a variety and recognize what your home is, or which one is yours and which one's not, very easily. So hopefully this provides a positive addition to the community as well as to the community adjacent. And back to our neighbor, as Steve was pointing out, they would be located roughly aligned with one of the parks. So that plus anything that we could do to better buffer or separate will be helpful. And the idea of, as Steve was saying, folks circulating along that north-south path is more dedicated to emergency personnel when it ever happens, and hopefully it doesn't. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant at this time?
Can you, it's hard to conceptualize how far the homeowner is from the buffer street along the bottom, east side of the project?
From the southernmost face of the easternmost face of the easternmost unit, it's about 52 feet to the property line.
And then how far is the house from the property line?
The house, I don't know for sure, but it would seem that it would at least be 15 to 20 feet away from that, just graphically, but we'd have to measure it. So it's approximately 70 feet from the nearest house. And between there would be, obviously, there's a 20-foot landscape area from the southern edge of that I'm continuously looking at the plan. From the eastern edge of that road to the property line, there's 20 feet of landscape. And then from the road to the house, there's another 10 to 15 possible. Okay. And they are literally about here. Thank you.
As far as the tree, the removal of, it's a lot of trees. So you estimate about 68 of those 100 trees identified by Davey. So if 64 are coming out, how many more are going in or being relocated?
What do you mean relocated? None are being relocated.
I should say in lieu of, so for the removal, how many will be planted
I
again?
don't know the exact numbers in terms of what's shown on the landscape plan, but it would be our intent to comply with the canopy requirement.
And would you be willing to, there's some different programs to put those trees back in the community somewhere? Is that something?
I think that's a possibility. I think ideally we'd find a place to fit them in on this site and make it feel like it does somewhat now and provide for a buffer from the property to the east. I think ideally we'd fit them all in on our site.
Okay, great.
But that said, I don't think there's any objection to some sort of agreement to place them somewhere.
If we couldn't fit them, we would definitely be open to it because obviously we want to do the right thing, and it's a great option I'm sure for many properties, for sure.
Great, thank you. And then I do want to talk about stormwater. The stormwater vaults, where will they be discharged? Is it the cooling, spinning
Some
vaults?
sort of water quality unit? No, so these are underground chambers. They're like a arch shape with an open bottom so that water can infiltrate. There's really almost 3 separate distinct watersheds within this development, and we've placed each of those chamber systems under the park space between buildings. Those 3 systems are then all combined and eventually discharged south toward the ravine area, which is ultimately where all the stormwater outlets today. As Elizabeth mentioned too, we will need a robust soil erosion and sedimentation control plan. I would anticipate we have an energy dissipating structure at the end of that, prior to that discharge, to make sure we don't have any erosion issues in the future. But yeah, each really, you can break this up into 3 kind of separate areas. Each one of those areas would manage their own stormwater internal to itself, and then ultimately discharge all to the south.
Has there been an estimate on, I mean, this is going to be a lot of concrete and a lot of tree removal. I mean, is that going to double, triple the amount of stormwater that's going to come out?
So, and I don't have that plan in front of me. We did do the stormwater calculations per the city's requirement, and we do have enough space. It's actually not that, it's dense, but there's actually a lot of pervious area within this development, within kind of the park spaces. And we're trying to maintain smaller roadway widths. The one road is 20, I think the others are 24. So they're not excessive. Driveways aren't excessively long. And then we do have some sidewalk connecting everything, but there's actually quite a bit of pervious space within the development. So the stormwater impact based on the impervious area is not overly, I don't know what the right word is, uncommon. It's what I would expect for a development like this.
Okay.
I know there is some concern from the city engineering regarding all the tree removals, and we'll work with them to identify what that impact is and make sure we're accounting for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Do you have anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Steve, can you, first and foremost, great design. I hope that we can show this to other developers in the future, the courtyards and the kind of the missing middle type of housing. Kudos to the team for that. With regard to the site design and the functionality of that southern drive, what about with like garbage pickup and stuff like that? Are you anticipating the trucks using that street as well?
Yeah, yep, I would expect that trucks would use that loop, that eastern loop, to get through the neighborhood. Yep. I believe the trash pickup will be the carts.
Okay.
Individual units will have a cart that they manage themselves and bring out to the curb like any residential neighborhood would do. And then I would anticipate once a week, the garbage service comes through and picks them up. And
perfect.
That they would probably utilize that eastern drive as well.
Okay. And snow removal, just thinking about placement of the snow, maybe pushing it at the end of that, let's see, the east, that southeast corner there where that homeowner's property is. Just, is there a way to buffer that curve there so that her house, the property owner's house sits on an angle? Just concerned with headlights shining into the side of that home as cars turn if they do use that drive. Is there an opportunity to put a little bit of a berm with landscaping there to try to mitigate some of that?
I believe just on her side, on the neighbor's side of that property line is a pretty mature evergreen line.
Sure.
So that obviously is on their property, and we wouldn't have any right. But I would expect we can plant some evergreens along that whole edge, and that we will do whatever we can to try to block that and provide some year-long screening. We can certainly focus our efforts on providing that for them. And there's about 20 feet there is 20 feet from the edge of that road to the property line, which should give more than enough space for plowing snow.
Okay. Yeah, I think any way that you folks can buffer that drive to the adjacent property, I think it'd bode well for the project as well as the adjacent property owner, trying to build some friends there. And then with regard to the height of the wall, what's the plan for there's going to be a fence on top of some type of
Yeah.
barrier?
Yep, that wall type, the MSC wall has a certain system, it's called a sleeve-it system, that is actually integral to the structure of the wall itself. And that receives a fence post, and then I would anticipate a black vinyl coated fence on the top of that.
Decorative fence, okay.
There's about 20 feet of green space between the top of the wall and then that drive.
Sure.
And even the house, I think, or the home's nearest points are 20 feet. So there's a decent landscape buffer between those.
Yeah, it'd be good to even buffer along there.
Right.
If someone hits the wrong pedal and.
Yeah.
And we don't want anyone going off the backside of that, so, okay. And then again, with a concern to just the loss of trees on site, if there's any way to try to mitigate, try to keep some of those mature trees, especially on that south boundary line, trying to preserve those and reduce the impact of trying to cut any of those roots for the drive and stuff, I think it's beneficial, so.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for the applicant right now? Okay, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today on this case in Lake Michigan Drive, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Ruth Parbell, and I live at 2436 Lake Michigan Drive, so it's the neighbor that you're talking about. I really am the only neighbor affected by this development. So I've lived here 27 years, and I know I measured today, I'm approximately 40 feet to the tree line from my front stoop to the tree line that will be between us that's on my property. But, you know, my main concern is that road running parallel to me, and you can say that it's only for emergency vehicles all you want, but it's still going to be utilized on a daily basis. And I don't know all the measurements, but that Covenant Way Road does look like it's going to end up right in my living room window. I know they know the proper measurements, I do not, but from the rendering that I've seen, that's what it looks like. Those are my main concerns, but like snowplow and trash, I mean, it's an extremely private, quiet area. I also wonder about transient people. We do see homeless occasionally. I've had homeless people living in that yard that they're going to develop before, so I know it hasn't been lately, but these things happen. So those are my main concerns and how this will impact my property value. It's a very private, beautiful spot that most people would find desirable, so. And I'm closer to downsizing at this point in my life than, you know, staying there for another 20 years. So how will that impact my investment? So I guess that's it.
All right,
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bob Krieger, and I live west of the project here, or of Covenant, on Thornridge Court. I built my home there 35 years ago. At that time, it was all green space in my backyard. There was nothing there, as it is now. When the original Covenant project was proposed, there were these meetings, all this type of thing. Well, that was in 1998 when they started in there. And through the years that they've been there, of course, all the green space, you know, disappeared with all of the different styles of living they have back there. And my house happens to be, well, Covenant is in my backyard of the assisted living unit. And that we constantly have headlights shining into our living room, family room windows on a weekly basis, or a couple times during the week when the trash man comes to empty the dumpsters. That's early in the morning, like around 7:45. All of a sudden, bang, we hear these dumpsters being emptied into the truck. It sounds awful. Wakes you up some mornings. All the time, fire trucks, ambulances coming in there into the parking lot. And, we see the flashing lights in our house and the loudness of the engines and all that type of thing. All of that was not proposed when they first built this, these structures, but through the years, that's what's happening. As far as this new proposal now that we're talking about today, I think it's just sad to see all of this green space go, all of these trees being cut down. I think it's a sad situation. And there is going to be a lot of traffic coming in and out of Lake Michigan Drive. It was stated that the traffic wasn't going to be a problem, but all of these people that are going to be living here obviously are going to be using Lake Michigan Drive as an entrance and an exit. So there's already many, many accidents there. The, seniors are getting into a lot of accidents there. So now this is going to bring more traffic. So I think that's something that should be considered also, because that's the only way in there. There isn't another entrance. It's just that off of Lake Michigan Drive. That's it. I could go on. My time is up. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else on this case? All right, I'll close the public hearing. If there's anything you want to address that was raised in the public hearing, otherwise, if there are other questions for the applicant at this time, that would be appropriate.
Based on the letterhead, I assume, Jose, you did the initial layouts that kind of set this up the way it's laid out currently. My question is really, did you consider backing the duplexes up to the neighboring, to the eastern property line and moving that access road upward to reduce the amount of pavement in general you'd be using? And what was the consequences of that layout?
The shape of the land, the shape of the site, allows for certain things for efficiency and for accommodating these kinds of, like the park concept that we have. So if we were to rotate it, it would be more of a one long park, which would render the site very inefficient. So that's pretty much it.
Would you consider making even the loop roads one way? Would you think that would help mitigate any effect on the neighbor? At least restrict it coming from one direction?
I don't see why not, but it would probably, I don't see why not. The question would be whether or not a fire truck would need to respect that or not. They're coming in to do their job, and they'll probably come in the quickest way.
Yeah, no doubt. I would hope so. Yeah, and to be clear, I just meant on the edge.
On that specific?
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Do that.
Yeah, I don't think, no.
The reality is that we're not expecting, given that folks come in, the folks that are using this road would most likely be the folks that live in these houses. So if you're driving in to go home, you'd come in home, and if you're going to leave, you leave the way you came. So we're expecting very little traffic of any sort. But nonetheless, so it's easy to say yes.
Yeah, understood. I'm thinking of visitors and trash mainly.
We'd all like to maintain as much green space and trees, and I think you've balanced that well. I am particularly concerned about the one neighbor who is closest, and that everything be done to maintain as much of the trees and other kinds of growth that can separate her from this, and particularly traffic lights and car lights coming down. And on the other hand, we have a real need for more housing in our community. And this is going to add to the shortage, or help the shortage that we have in place. And these types of communities are springing up all over, which I think are a healthy way for people to retire or in their later years have a community at every stage of the way. So I applaud the effort there.
Initially I didn't love the line of road along Lake Michigan Drive either. I'm wondering if you can maybe talk about what that experience from Lake Michigan Drive will be like. I know there's a huge grade change there, so there's a large concrete wall along that elevation. But as you get closer to your main entrance, it does kind of level off between the old driveway of the pre-existing home and there, and so we're going to be looking at the backs of these condos and a road on that northern edge.
You nailed it. There is a very large wall along that whole stretch, basically from the driveway. It starts not too far after that and goes quite a ways east down Lake Michigan Drive. So from that perspective, I don't think there will be a visual really at all from anybody driving down Lake Michigan Drive. They're not going to see up into the development just because of how tall that wall is. But yeah, your experience once you're pulling into this site, you will see kind of the garages for those first few units. This little bit of visitors parking has actually been removed from the plan, so it'll just be a road that comes in then, and yeah, you will see the back garages of those first few units along that drive. So some of the trees that we actually are able to save that are some of the nicer ones are up along that frontage. I think there's some big trees that had been around the house. So that house used to sit somewhere in here, and there were some larger trees, and those actually are some of the few that we are able to save. So it'll be nice to maintain some of that from that view from Lake Michigan Drive as well.
Will you be leveling that grade at all between your driveway and just the east of the old home's driveway? Because right now, it seems pretty consistent where the retaining wall is, but drops down and it's consistently level with Lake Michigan Drive between the two drives.
So I don't know if this answers that, but each one of these drives in is actually a fairly steep slope up. So the whole site, this all kind of sits up on somewhat of a plateau before it all drops again. So each one, we tried really hard as an engineering team to grade this site in a way that balances earthwork and preserves trees and limits the amount of disturbance as much as possible. So there is a bit of a climb up at each one of these until you kind of get to that flattened out spot, to where each one of those works. Yeah,
put on the grading
yeah,
plan?
that'd be
Thanks.
awesome. I was hoping you would do that.
Yeah, I guess my concern is just coming from the west, you'll be looking at the backs of the homes with a street running parallel to a street, and just the aesthetics of that don't sound great to me. And so I think increasing the amount of landscaping that's currently there
Yeah, we do
would be really critical.
We do have an opportunity to increase that landscape for sure. And that would definitely be in the intent.
Okay. Well, I don't want to see the road, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Understood.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you because I think it's a good point. I didn't really think about that as you're pulling in, that you're going to be seeing the garage doors. And we do have some pretty nice looking garage doors, but maybe we can put some more architectural detail in the back of that to kind of make it look a little bit nicer as you're coming in, because you're not seeing the front of the building. So thanks.
Will there be visitor parking somewhere, now that you mentioned it?
So so a visitor could park in a driveway of any of the unit owners. There's a few, we are adding another parking lot in, just to the west, 24 spaces, I believe is what we have in that. And then there is an existing lot here as well, with some continuity with sidewalks, where this is a proposed sidewalk to create some connections. And then we did take that opportunity at each crossing to add a sidewalk, and I'll have a crosswalk. And then the far south parking lot as well. It would be anticipated that visitors could park in that and then make their way up into the development itself. But really no on-street parking. The roads are too narrow to provide on-street parking. But there is enough room to park in driveways of units in addition to the people parking within their garages themselves.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, then discussion. I feel like concerns are related to disturbance of the trees and how that's handled, the adjacent property owner and Lake Michigan Drive edges and how that's buffered. In terms of the use, any concerns?
I think, like I said, we have a shortage of housing, including all different types of housing, and this helps to address that. And it's hard to take out what has been kind of a buffer, a park, a wooded area when people have been used to that. So to the degree, though, and I think that it sounds as if they're looking at trying to be a good neighbor and add the buffering needed. I hope this can work for everyone. But overall, the use, I think, is definitely something we need more of.
I agree. I feel like there's a good faith effort right here to work with the community around them, and just hope that we can get some more of those trees back in there and keep the stormwater clean and at a minimum. But I also feel that the need for this type of housing outweighs some of those concerns for me right now.
Yeah, I think I'm overall, I think it's a great development, well, much needed. I'm still concerned along that east property line. I just feel like looking at that grading plan, and I don't need to get into too many details, but we got a 20-foot retaining wall going in along that ravine so that they can get some more units in, and then it's just graded right up to that east property line so they can put that road in. And I just think, can we put another retaining wall on that line? That would involve relocating the storm sewer outlet, which, I don't see an immediate place where that could go, but I would just encourage us to think about, maybe as we go through the plan review process, to think about how can we minimize disturbance along that area rather than just do what seems to be like a 1-on-6 slope and just grading right up to the property line, which would necessitate tree removal, right? If there's a way to relocate that second system outlet that goes out along that road, then a small retaining wall there would save a 20-foot buffer right along there of no grading. And, again, I don't have the solution, but it feels like there might be one there that would limit that disturbance quite a bit.
There was some discussion early on about tree replacement, but we didn't get any farther than that. Is there any, are we looking at money amount or a tree amount to be placed elsewhere or somewhere else on the site?
If they can handle it on site, I'm great with that. But I suppose I leave it to the discretion of staff. They can work that out in the final process.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Maybe for my benefit as kind of a newbie here, but a 60-second overview of what that program is. Like, if it's not on site, what are the options? Do they literally go plant trees somewhere else on city property or deposit funds in the forestry or what?
Yeah, there's a payment in lieu plan where they can pay into a fund, or they can work with the Parks Department to place them elsewhere within the community as needed.
Yeah, I would be okay then with staff assessing that if it's not available on site to wherever the impact is best.
And there's a new parking lot that's incorporated into the development on the west side. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep, just on the west side, and it's mainly adjacent to the existing building. This right here is.
Could you turn the mic on, or
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Just too far away from it. Yeah, I think we got 24 spaces out of, whoops. Oh, are you doing that? Yeah, so you can see it shaded there, proposed parking.
Stephen, what's the plan for landscaping on that western edge?
Can you go to the landscape plan?
it doesn't show any landscaping there.
Our intent would be to provide, yeah. Our intent would be to provide landscaping along that whole parking lot. So there is a detention basin. There's an existing detention basin in this zone here, and then it is fairly heavily wooded again when you get to the west property line through here. So I don't believe there's much of a view for anyone. But we certainly would try to interject some landscaping around that parking lot for sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If there's no more discussion, I'm happy to make the motion.
Yep, I'm good with that.
Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves a special land use and site plan review request of Covenant Living Communities and Services, Randy Gross, to construct 18 duplexes with 36 total units for independent senior living at 2480, 2492, 2500, and 2520 Lake Michigan Drive Northwest for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will meet the underlying intent of the MON LDR, modern era neighborhood, low density residential, zone district to create, maintain, and promote a variety of housing opportunities for individual households. Support goals outlined in the master plan Great Neighborhoods chapter that are supportive of the provision of housing types other than single-family detached residential, including GN3, provide a broad range of high-quality housing choices. GN3A, maintain and increase the number and variety of housing units. GN3B, allow for new housing products. And GN3C, allow for a range of housing types within all neighborhoods. And help meet the goal of the age-friendly Grand Rapids Action Plan to provide an opportunity for high quality of life for people of all ages. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.08.E because the residential use is at appropriate density for the size and nature of the site. Elements of the site are harmoniously and efficiently organized in relation to the site and character of the site and the type, size, and proportions of the buildings. Natural features include notable mature vegetation and topography will be incorporated into the site design to the maximum extent practicable. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because the project provides a unique character for senior housing by enhancing its walkable scale and reinforcing its sense of place. And the site plan addresses the existing built environment by appropriate location of building types and orientation relative to adjacent properties. The proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because adequate landscape buffering will be provided to shield neighboring property from glare from vehicles and homes. The buildings and entrances will be appropriately oriented on the site, and adequate parking will be provided. The proposed uses will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to the existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, or visual clutter, because the age-restricted housing is anticipated to create less noise and activity than a similar single-family development. And the traffic study has determined that the development will have minimal impact on the roadway network. The proposed use would not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because private roads and internal sidewalks will connect the new duplexes to one another, the rest of the campus, and to Lake Michigan Drive. The proposed use will retain as many natural features of the landscape as practicable, particularly where the natural features assist in preserving the general character of the neighborhood, because additional vegetation will be added to buffer the development from adjacent property. The design of the proposed retaining wall will facilitate retention of on-site trees, and development will not affect steep slopes. The health, safety, and general welfare of the public will be maintained because the public infrastructure already exists, and additional private infrastructure will be constructed and maintained by the applicant. The proposed use would not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the additional units will contribute to the tax base, and the private infrastructure will be maintained by the development. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A on the screen. And number 2, that the perimeter landscaping along the north and east side lot lines shall, at a minimum, meet the landscape buffer requirements of section 5.11.12.d for the MON neighborhood classification.
Need to change that now based on the drive where that parking lot on the west side is located at.
Oh, so just north.
Well, it'll
North
be
and-
both sides. Light.
And, yes, and site lot line, okay.
Landscaping in front of the driveway.
Well, and that's the
Northwest.
That's the north.
It's the north elevation. So yes, I think all along the north edge, I think needs to be well thought out and buffered. I think the east lot line, but also around the new parking lot on the west.
Yes.
Kind of the west central part of the property, existing parcel. Right? So all three.
Yes.
And the sides.
Yes.
Yes.
Side lot lines shall, okay. Great.
And if we could add that at LUD's submittal, a plan illustrating tree and root protection in those zones be submitted as part of that, so we're guaranteed that there's some protection of those existing trees along at least the east side and the north side. Does that make sense? Sorry, I'm very wordy. My apologies. Plan illustration, tree and root protection zones, showing methods and details for tree protection of existing vegetation during construction be required as part of LUD's submittal.
All right, incorporating that. I'm sorry, did we have support? Who supported?
I'll support.
Okay. Any additional discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. I'll open up the public comment portion of the meeting. If you're here today on anything else you'd like to share with us, now's your opportunity to come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Fridsma. My husband Steve Fridsma and I have lived in the Second Ward for 27 years. The past 22 years have been in our current house, which shares a border with Huff Park and the uniquely biodiverse wetlands in Cattail Crossings Nature Preserve. I would like to share my thoughts about protecting Huff Park from the environmental impact of potential condo developments along its south border, a concept that was presented by the developer at the April 5th meeting of the Creston Neighborhood Association Land Use Committee. I, along with a host of neighbors who enjoy time in Huff Park, would ask that the Planning Commission maintain the current zoning designation of low-density residential without a special use permit or zoning change that would allow greater density along the borders of Huff Park. The nature of our neighborhood is nature, and many of us consider ourselves stewards of the park. For example, Steve and I put up with a much less than pristine lawn. We spend hours clearing invasive garlic, mustard, and buckthorn by hand because we don't want to risk herbicide running off into the wetlands. Our daughter spent hours on this past Easter pulling trash out of Lamberton Creek, where it runs through Huff Park. Using various LLCs, the developer has purchased 8 lots on Knapp and Joan along the south border of Huff Park. He's now approaching people to buy homes along Ontario and Knapp, in effect depleting the stock of affordable starter homes. He's repairing houses and, rather than flipping and selling them, renting them, which the neighbors infer as buying time potentially until he can purchase enough properties to proceed with a larger development. I understand concerns that this may appear to reflect a not-in-my-backyard mindset. In fact, I am supportive of sustainable, well-planned development, like we just saw, that provides affordable and diverse housing options, especially when it's accessible to public transit. In this case, however, my voice is joined by numerous neighbors who have written to the Planning Commission, dozens of neighbors who spoke at the Creston Neighborhood Association Land Use Committee meeting on August 2, and over 5,700 signatures that joined an online petition. It's as if we're all saying, not in Huff Park's backyard. The trail is a wonderful, almost wilderness experience that could be ruined by highly visible development along a prominent ridge that is very close to the trail. That's not to say that I oppose all options. The developer certainly has the right to build within a low-density residential guidelines, approximating the existing adjacent lot sizes, home sizes, and deep backyards, which are harmonious with Huff Park, and which would allow for 4 to 5 single-family homes. We are proud of the Green City initiatives in Grand Rapids. It promotes a humane and sustainable atmosphere. Please help us find ways to protect this precious urban green space, a vital natural resource that contributes to the beauty, health, and well-being of our vibrant city.
All right, thank you.
For your consideration.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Nicole Smith, and I currently live on Ontario Avenue, just off of Knapp and Fuller, adjacent to Copper Rock's purchased property, also adjacent to Huff Park. I know the developer's formal plans have not been presented, but it's important to note that the strong community opposition to the tentative plans ahead of time. I'm opposed to a potential special land use permit in the future being granted to Copper Rock Construction on the 9 or more properties that he has already purchased adjacent to Huff Park, due to the area being zoned for low density on the present and future Grand Rapids land use maps. I live on Ontario Avenue, and I do understand the housing strain in our city that we are currently under. I support affordable housing and smart growth planning in cities, which more favorably supports sustainability and quality of human life. I also believe that further and better initiatives of public transportation need to be discussed and executed before approving of high-density luxury housing like this instance. Smart growth takes strategic city planning as well as restricting or preventing large-scale developers from being able to dictate what cityscapes look like. Decimating the land closely surrounding green spaces like Huff Park by high-density luxury housing would have multiple negative impacts to residents, the neighborhood, and the rich biodiversity of Huff Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll close public comment. Commissioners or staff, anything else for today? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.